Chapter 679. You can't escape. You will definitely die today. The rising cloud ancestor roared. He sensed that Zu's speed had slowed down after a short period of time. He knew that his opponent had run out of strength, so he became even more motivated. During this time, he did have some doubts. After all, Zu's battle strength was indeed very strong. He could use all kinds of methods, as if he did not care about the consumption. However, he knew that there was a limit to the Jindan energy in any cultivator's body. Even if Zu had many supplementary methods, it would be difficult for him to escape from the shackle. In addition, the expression on Zu's face and the aura on his body made him clearly feel that he was weakening. Coupled with his absolute confidence in his own strength, he was not afraid at all. I'm here. This is the place. At this moment, Zu's eyes lit up. His figure flashed like lightning as he calculated the position and quickly passed through. Ha ha ha, a spatial crack. So this is the method you deliberately use to get rid of me? Don't you know that my divine eyes are amazing? Even if it's a hidden spatial crack, I can see it clearly. Ascending Cloud Ancestor looked at Baizue, who was passing through the edge of the spatial crack, and laughed out loud. Then, he turned and quickly passed through the spatial crack. He, who thought that he had seen through Zu's plan, was completely relieved. There was even a trace of a sinister smile on his face. Is that so? Zu sneered. He paused for a moment and quickly pointed out a starlight. Chi! The starlight directly touched the spatial crack. Whoosh! A crisscrossing fissure that covered an area of 300 feet suddenly appeared. Although there will be some fluctuations when the spatial crack appears, it is not a threat to me. The rising cloud ancestor sneered and did not care at all. His figure rushed out like lightning as he excitedly looked at Zu, getting closer and closer. The primordial spirit power in his body was boiling, and he was already preparing to attack. However, at this moment, the moment the spatial crack appeared, there seemed to be a special energy that was triggered. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, bolts of lightning shot out from the void. Almost in an instant, it came crashing down and drowned the rising cloud ancestor. Not good. The rising cloud ancestor's complexion changed greatly, and he no longer cared about Zu as he hurriedly took action to defend himself. On the other side, Zu also took advantage of the moment when the booby trap was about to strike. He knew that with the ascending cloud ancestor's strength, even though this crafty lightning was strong, it would absolutely be difficult for it to obstruct him for long. As such, he did not dare to hesitate at all. One after another, he executed his moves swiftly like flowing water. 5 Emperors, Heaven Sealing Sword, Heaven and Earth in the sleeve, Great Taboo Spirit Art, Innate Divine Ability Absent-Mindedness, Rays of Sealing Grand Divine Abilities descended rapidly, filling the sky with spiritual light. Damn it! Rising Cloud Ancestor's heart sank. He knew that he had miscalculated. He thought that his plan had worked and that he had seen through the spatial rift. However, he did not expect that the spatial rift would be connected to the mysterious array formation in the stellar origin Divine Mountain, forming a large area of strange lightning. The crafty lightning fell. Even though his strength was extraordinary, he was still forced into a very passive situation. Using all sorts of methods, it took him a total of 3 breaths before he managed to escape from it. Then, he saw Baizue. He saw the calmness on Baizue's face. He saw the ice-cold, killing intent in the depths of Baizue's eyes. He also saw the abundant and complete core essence rising from Baizue's body. He had fallen into a trap. The Jindan essence in his opponent's body was unbelievably abundant. In addition to the consumption of his various moves earlier, the rising cloud ancestor realized that his Jindan essence was much more abundant than his primordial spirit power. The weakness that he had displayed earlier was simply a trap. Then, he felt a ball of spirit land on his body. Chi! He immediately sensed that the power of the soul in his body had suddenly dispersed. It had been sealed by a special power. He quickly used his divine thought to activate the primordial spirit power in his body. The foundation of a primordial spirit realm expert's power was the primordial spirit. When the primordial spirit was activated, not only was their control of their own power extremely strong, but it was also extremely pure. Their resistance to great divine skills like the Great Taboo Spirit Technique had also reached an astonishing level. In the blink of an eye, a shocking aura arose from his body again. However, just as his aura began to rise, 3 consecutive soul attacks were launched at him. It was Yue who had used his divine skill, absent-minded. Compared to other great divine skills, Ziyue's divine skill was an instinctive move. He could use it almost instantly. This time, in order to kill the rising cloud ancestor, he naturally used all his strength. He used all the soul power in his body in one go, and 3 consecutive attacks landed. Even though the rising cloud ancestor's primordial spirit was strong and tenacious, and was superior to Ziyue's, he still felt a piercing pain in his heart, and his consciousness became blurry. Then Ziyue's Heaven and Earth in the sleeve and the 5 Emperors' Heaven-Sealing Sword Technique, 2 great divine skills, descended and directly pulled the rising cloud ancestor into the seal. It's done! Ziyue was overjoyed. With the help of the space crack and the booby trap, he finally found an opportunity to create an excellent attack condition. While using the attribute panel to replenish the soul power and pure purple elixir energy that he had consumed, he waved his hand, and a divine light that was like a waterfall quickly condensed. Dao Technique, Magnetic Divine Light. Hum, hum, hum. The void folded, and the space became chaotic. A heavy pressure caused the sky and earth to change color the moment the divine light condensed. Swish! Then he waved his hand. Rumble! The void roared and the space collapsed. Like a flash of flowing light, it directly hit the rising cloud ancestor, who was in the Heaven and Earth in the sleeve. Its speed was extremely fast. In the Heaven and Earth in the sleeve, the rising cloud ancestor's face was pale and his mind was in a mess. Quick, quick, quick! I have to get out of here as soon as possible. He knew that Ziyue had an attack that was comparable to the strength of a late primordial spirit realm expert. The moment he thought of the strength and terror of that attack, he felt a wave of horror and fear in his heart. Therefore, he desperately used his attack technique and bombarded the space around the Heaven and Earth in the sleeve. 1 attack, 2 attacks, 3 attacks. The Heaven and Earth in the sleeve was broken. He relaxed, but the joy on his face did not even have time to bloom. Immediately, he sensed that there was a sealing sword technique outside the Heaven and Earth in the sleeve. His face suddenly froze, and his heart was filled with despair. Then, as if he had sensed something, he suddenly raised his head. No! Then he felt his vision go black. His entire body was immersed in the divine light, and he completely lost consciousness. He was dead. The rising cloud ancestor had fallen. Chapter 680. The primordial magnetic divine light blasted down. It was as if it could annihilate everything. Even though rising cloud ancestor's strength was far superior to Bitter Chick's, and he even had a defensive armor on his body, Bitter Chick still couldn't escape. However, when the grand proto-magnetic divine light descended, the defensive armor on his body, the incomparably tough Yuan divinity body, the pure and powerful Yuan divinity, everything on his body was completely destroyed and turned into dust. Soul energy plus 492588136. 2 primordial spirit realm cultivators. Even if they're only at the early stage of the primordial spirit realm, the total amount of spiritual energy they have given me is almost 100 million. Ziyue looked at the attribute panel, feeling satisfied, including the 230 million points that he had originally left behind. Even if he deducted the time reversal power and the Jindan essence recovery power during the battle, he still had 300 million points left. It could be considered sufficient. Then, his gaze fell on the place where the rising cloud ancestor had fallen. This was because Ziyue's metamagnetic divine light was simply too powerful. Therefore, even if the rising cloud ancestor storage pouch was of an extraordinary grade, it was still unable to withstand the force and was forcefully broken open. As the terrifying energy spread out, Many of the treasures in the bag of holding were crushed into pieces. Only a few treasures with astonishing hardness and extraordinary grades were left. Zua stretched out his hand, and the 3 treasures fell into his hand. A short sword, a token, and a special piece of metal that is completely black and looks like a metal plate. Among them, the short sword was the origin spirit treasure used by the Rising Cloud ancestor. It was a low-grade origin spirit treasure. Just by floating in the air, it emitted an astonishing aura. It was as if it could pierce through the void and cut through mountains. Good sword. Even if it couldn't be used as smoothly as a natal magic treasure after being refined, its power wasn't weak at all. Under the control of a golden core cultivator, the offensive power it can unleash is definitely not inferior to that of a grand divine ability at the perfected level. A glint flashed across by Zua's eyes. In his hands, the dagger's power was limited. After all, his own offensive methods rarely originated from magic treasures. Most of them were mystiques, great mystiques, and Tao techniques. To him, Dharma treasures were only an external source of strength. Divine abilities and Tao techniques were his foundation. In his eyes, a great mystique at the level of perfection was better than countless magical treasures, and a Tao technique at the level of perfection was more useful to him than all immortal soul treasures. As for spirit treasures of even higher grades, and incomparably wondrous, it was difficult for him to make a judgment because he had never come into contact with them. However, in his opinion, the more precious a treasure was, the harder it was to refine it and use it to its full potential. For example, even with his current ability, he would need at least a month of time to refine a low-grade soul core treasure before he could barely control it. Moreover, if he wanted to control it freely, he would need half a year of hard work. If it was a middle-grade primordial spirit treasure, a superior-grade primordial spirit treasure, or even a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure, even if it was more powerful, it would take more time to refine and use it. After using it, the amount of Jindan energy it would consume would be even more terrifying. Instead, it was better to cultivate a Tao technique. As long as one cultivated it, they would be able to borrow the power of their soul to quickly improve and reach the peak of perfection. In his hands, the might of a Tao technique at the level of perfection would definitely surpass that of a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure. However, although this primordial spirit treasure dagger was not of much use to him, it would greatly increase the strength of other golden core cultivators. It was definitely not cheap. This medallion is rather similar to the star medallion that I have. It is also similar to the moon medallion that I took from Tao Lord Heaven Origin, and there is a sun on it. Could it be one of the rare sun medallions in the 9-star Tao Palace? It is said that in the 9-star Tao Palace, apart from the Sun Moon Star medallion held by the Palace Lord, this sun medallion is of the highest grade. Not only does it have a lot of authority, it can also be used to investigate the specific location of the 9-star Tao Palace disciples within a certain range. Zua muttered to himself as some vague ideas arose in his mind. Then he put them away. Finally, his gaze fell on the pitch-black metal plate. The material of this metal plate is indeed unusual. Is it the legendary black meteorite gold? Black meteorite gold is an ancient refinement material. If black meteorite gold is added to any artifact, not only will its toughness be greatly increased, it will also have the effect of avoiding magic and lightning. Once I add black meteorite gold to my life treasure, it will be able to resist the heavenly tribulation. My chances of surviving the heavenly tribulation will also increase. Ziyue was rather excited. Black meteorite gold was something that only some ancient ruins or the top sects had kept. It had always been extremely precious and was rarely seen in the outside world. He had not expected that the primordial spirit cultivators of a 9-star Tao Palace would have it. It just so happened that he was already somewhat dissatisfied with the grade of his life treasure. This time, he had encountered 2 primordial spirit experts. Even though the Northern Dark Flying Sword's power was not weak, the inferior grade of the artifact had indeed caused him to be somewhat apprehensive when attacking. When dealing with the opponent's attacks, he had intentionally avoided them several times, afraid that the collision would cause his artifact to shatter. After all, compared to a primordial spirit artifact, the grade of his life treasure was still much lower. Suddenly, Ziyue raised his eyes slightly and looked into the distance. A beautiful figure was rapidly rushing in his direction. It was the Dream Immortal King, Li Mengxian. Are you all right? I felt the commotion of the battle just now and thought that you had been tracked. What about the Rising Cloud Ancestor? Seeing Ziyue's figure, the Dream Immortal King's tense nerves immediately relaxed, and she hurriedly asked. Even though her tone was somewhat stiff, there was still a faint trace of concern in her words. He's dead, Ziyue said calmly. He's dead. Li Mengxian was stunned and could not help but widen her eyes. She was very clear about the Rising Cloud Ancestor's strength. He was much stronger than Patriarch Bitterchick. Previously, on the third level of Stellar Origin, Sacred Mountain, if Ziyue had not predicted the Rising Cloud Ancestor's tracks in advance and injured him in one blow, the outcome would have been absolutely unpredictable. The fierce battle that had just occurred had also proved this point. Although Ziyue's strength had soared after his breakthrough, in terms of combat strength, he was still slightly weaker than the Rising Cloud Ancestor. However, at this moment, she was shocked to hear that the Rising Cloud Ancestor had died. How could this be? Could it be that Ziyue had some other tricks up his sleeve? Previously, he had asked her to retreat in advance just to deceive others and prevent her from spying on him. He's dead. Ziyue nodded in confirmation and did not explain in detail. After thinking for a while, he continued to say, "Thanks. This time, I actually took action just to repay you for saving my life. If it wasn't for you, I might have been captured and killed by that demonic Dao, true cultivator." Li Mengxian shook her head and said bitterly, "Moreover, I didn't help much this time. With your strength, they're no threat at all." Chapter 681. Saving Your Life? Ziyue raised his eyebrows in surprise, knowing that the other party had misunderstood. Previously, when he fought with Patriarch Bittersonnet, it was not to save her, but it was a coincidence. Most importantly, it was Patriarch Bittersonnet who took the initiative to attack him. It was almost impossible for him to take the initiative to save someone who had shouted at him to kill him. However, he did not say much and only said, "This old Taoist Shengyun is not weak. I also borrowed the power of the spatial rift here, as well as the formation lightning that was connected to the entire star origin divine mountain. Only then did I find an opportunity to launch a sure kill strike against him. Otherwise, even if my strength is not weaker than his, it would be difficult for me to kill him." As he spoke, he flicked his finger and a ray of starlight shot out. Swish! The spatial crack appeared once again, and the strange lightning that filled the surroundings once again seemed to tear apart the heavens, directly striking down from the void. Boom! 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 The scene of raging lightning emitted intense and terrifying elemental energy fluctuations, as if it was the end of the world, causing people to feel a sense of reverence. Li Mengxian's face paled, and a trace of fear flashed in the depths of her eyes. Even though she was dozens of miles away, she could clearly feel the terror of this strange lightning. In her heart, she secretly thought that the power of the heavenly tribulation's baptism was probably nothing more than this. Although she had opened all 9 Jindan shackles, she still did not have absolute confidence in surviving the heavenly tribulation and becoming an immortal soul. Thank you for the reminder. Otherwise, if I rashly approached, even if I did not die, I would have been severely injured. A trace of gratitude appeared in Li Mengxian's eyes. She then took a deep breath and seriously reminded him. However, fellow Taoist, it is indeed worthy of celebration that you have killed 2 immortal soul stage true cultivators this time. However, the identities of these 2 immortal soul stage true cultivators were different. One of them was the true devil sex elder, Patriarch Bittersonnet. Although this Patriarch Bittersonnet was only an immortal soul stage elder who was ranked at the bottom of the true devil sect, the true devil sect, as a devil sect, had always been arrogant and domineering. With the death of the sect elders, the true devil sect would definitely not let this matter rest, and would eliminate the devil Dao rankers. Based on my understanding of the true devil sect, since the one who died this time was a primordial soul stage ranker, then this time it is very likely that they are in the middle stage of the primordial soul stage, or even the late stage of the primordial soul stage. Ziyue nodded. The true devil sect was one of the few demonic sects in the firmament territory that could rival super sects like the celestial spirit sect and the nature sect. They also had at least 10 primordial spirit realm experts. Moreover, he was unreasonable, overbearing, and extremely vengeful. Wasn't Patriarch Bitter Lettuce attacking him because of the 3 golden core realm devil cultivators he'd killed earlier? However, he was not worried about this. This true devil sect was tyrannical and ruthless, and had a strong desire for revenge. Could it be that Ziyue's desire for revenge was not strong? Passively taking a beating and silently waiting for others to surround and attack him had never been his character. He would naturally settle this score with them. Although he rarely massacred sects and destroyed strongholds, it was not like he had never done it before. No matter how strong the true devil sect was, there would come a day when he would trample through their mountain gate. As for this ascending cloud patriarch, his background is even more complicated. He was the core power of the 9-star Dao Palace, a Sun Order level assassin. In a 9-star Dao Palace, almost everyone could be called an assassin. The highest level was said to be the 9-star Dao Palace's Palace Master and Vice Palace Master, who held the Sun Moon Star token, followed by the Sun Order, the Moon Order, and finally the lowest level, the Star Order. The assassins who held the Sun Order were known as Dao Palace Commanders, and the weakest of them were at the primordial spirit realm. This ascending cloud patriarch usually sat in the Dingwest city of the true law domain. Since he had come to the firmament territory's star source, sacred mountain, to attack you, someone in the Dao Palace must have set up a bounty. Furthermore, it was a Sun Order level bounty. Once a Sun Order bounty was accepted, it would not rest until one was dead. After the previous assassin fell or failed, a second one would immediately come. After 3 times, if you were still alive, the 9-star Dao Palace's bounty would be revoked. At that time, the 9-star Dao Palace's Palace Master would even personally appear to invite you and offer generous rewards to rope you in. However, unless one was extremely powerful, very few would be able to escape the second time, let alone the third time. The 9-star Dao Palace had been established for tens of thousands of years, and only a few could achieve this. Among these people, there was only one person who managed to escape the 3rd assassination attempt. This person was the current 9-star Dao Palace's Palace Master. It was said that his strength had already reached an unprecedented level, and some even said that he had already surpassed the primordial spirit realm and stepped into another realm. The Dream Immortal King continued with a solemn expression. Her background was not high, and the Gusha mountain range was at most slightly more prosperous than the cloud-piercing mountain range. However, after she became a king-ranked expert, she had more or less received information that ordinary people could not imagine or even receive. There were all kinds of rumors, and even she felt that it was an eye-opener. Surpassed the primordial spirit realm and stepped into another realm? After the primordial spirit realm? What realm is after the primordial spirit realm? Ziyue was shocked and could not help but feel a little pressured. However, he could not help but feel a sense of yearning in his heart. Endless yearning. Although he was only at the middle golden core realm, perhaps because his level was not high enough, or perhaps because he had come into contact with very few immortal techniques, the strongest strength he knew was only at the primordial spirit realm. He had no idea what realm was after the primordial spirit realm, what kind of strength one had, or what it was like. Now that he heard that someone had reached the realm after the primordial spirit realm, he was immediately curious. He also wanted to truly understand what kind of power and mysteries this realm had. I don't know. Li Mengxian shook her head and said, You don't know? Bai Ziyue glared at him. How could she not know? His curiosity had been aroused, and he had come into contact with such a secret. I really don't know. The realm above the primordial spirit realm is something that even the supreme elder of the Sky Mist sect, who is at the early primordial spirit realm, does not know. Without reaching that level, it is impossible to comprehend the mysteries of that level. I have only heard about it from hearsay, but no one dares to say for sure. Perhaps only the sect masters and elders of those super sects would have some understanding. However, in this realm, there are definitely people who have reached this level. For example, super forces like the Heavenly Spirit sect, the Myriad sect, and even the True Devil sect are said to have produced experts above the primordial spirit realm and left behind an extremely deep foundation. That is why they have been able to survive for so long and prosper for hundreds of thousands of years. Chapter 682. It is also because we do not know the specific realm above the primordial spirit realm that we usually call those existences almighty. Almighty immortal Tao. That's right. The reason why the 9-star Tao Palace has developed so quickly and become so powerful. It is said that it is because of this palace master's shocking strength that he is suspected to have reached the level of almighty immortal Tao. Li Mengxian explained. Almighty? Almighty immortal Tao? Ziyue was shocked. There were many names for primordial spirit realm cultivators in the outside world. They could be called by their original Taoist name, true cultivator, or ancestor. For example, once Ziyue became a primordial spirit, the outside world could call him Taoist North Deep, ancestor North Deep, or his early Taoist name, Taoist Kunlun. However, the title of Almighty Immortal Tao naturally gave people a sense of deterrence and was obviously much more pretentious. For the current you and me, the level of Almighty Immortal Tao is still too far away. What is in front of you now is the imminent threat of the True Devil sect and the 9-star Tao Palace. That's right, there is also the Heavenly Spirit sect. The 9-extinction Sword King also died at your hands. The Heavenly Spirit sect is also one of the super sections. As Li Mengxian spoke, she looked at Ziyue in hindsight, and a deep shock flashed in her eyes. It was only at this moment that she suddenly realized that Bai Ziyue had actually offended 3 superpowers in succession in a short period of time. Moreover, all of them had several tens of nascent soul-true cultivators, and they even seemed to possess the strength of an almighty figure in the immortal Tao, I know. However, it doesn't matter. I, North Deep, have always done things with a peace of mind. If anyone wants to harm me, I will not sit still and wait for death. So what if it is the 3 superpowers? If someone really comes, I will definitely break their teeth. Moreover, who said that only they can find trouble with me, and I can't find trouble with them? Bai Ziyue smiled faintly and said in a calm tone. However, at this moment, the calmer Ziyue's tone was the stronger the impact and impact on Li Mengxian was. If it was anyone else who had offended just one, they would probably panic and be unable to eat or sleep in peace. However, not only did Ziyue not care, he even dared to say that he would take revenge. Aren't you afraid? Your strength may be extremely strong, comparable to that of an early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator. However, if the next opponent is a mid-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator, or even a late-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator, how are you going to defend yourself? Li Mengxian asked anxiously. It's fine as long as you're strong enough. No matter who it is, as long as I show that I'm stronger than them and kill them, wouldn't that be enough? What's the difference between a mid-stage or late-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator? Ziyue said faintly. It's fine as long as I'm strong enough. Li Mengxian was dumbfounded. Since when did things become so simple? Furthermore, was being strong enough something that could be achieved just by talking about it? As she saw it, although Taoist Dark North was powerful, his combat prowess was at most at the early stage primordial soul realm. But now he had just broken through from the early stage of the Golden Core realm to the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. At the very least, he would need tens or even hundreds of years of bitter accumulation before he could make another breakthrough and reach the late stage of the Golden Core realm. And within this period of time, it would be enough for the 3 great immortal techniques to kill him countless times over. Ziyue did not explain anything. How would others know how fast and ferocious his improvement in strength was? Instead, he said in a slightly cold tone, "All right, this matter is over. Let's part ways here. Of course, if you want to avenge your brother, I'll accompany you at any time. Although you made the first move this time, I won't hold it against you on account of the fact that you've helped me after all. If you make a move the next time, don't blame me for not taking into account our past relationship." "Wait," Li Mengxian panicked and hurriedly said, "I've long been aware of what happened to my brother. It has nothing to do with you. He only has himself to blame for everything. Although I knew that he was unreasonable and foppish, I didn't expect him to be so unscrupulous in his actions. He even used my name to hire people to make a move and caused so much trouble. There were many things that others didn't pursue because they were wary of me. As for the reason why I made a move against you, other than because I was indeed a little angry, it was more because I happened to be at a critical moment in my closed-door cultivation. Because my clone collapsed, I didn't break through the 9th golden core shackle in one go. Now that I've broken through the golden core shackle, the knot in my heart has been untied. Naturally, I won't make a move against you again." "Oh, that's for the best." Ziyue paused for a moment. Then, lightning flashed on his body, and he turned into a bolt of lightning, flying into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Li Mengxian opened her mouth and felt a sense of melancholy in her heart. But in the end, she stopped where she was. Her eyes were filled with complex emotions. But soon, a trace of determination flashed across her eyes. Any immortal technique cultivator who cultivated in seclusion all the way to the Golden Core realm would have an incomparably firm heart towards the Tao. In comparison, many emotions would become indifferent. The great Tao was heartless. Then, her gaze landed in the direction of the crack in space. Previously, when the crack in space was triggered, countless bolts of lightning fell. For some reason, it reminded her of the baptism of the heavenly tribulations that she was about to face. Although the two were different, there were still certain similarities. They were also extremely powerful. She wanted to break through to the primordial soul realm. To her, this place that could continuously produce bolts of lightning comparable to the heavenly tribulations was an opportunity. For the current her, it was an opportunity. She believed that as long as she cultivated in seclusion nearby for a period of time, she would definitely reap some benefits. She reckoned that not long after, she would be able to use this opportunity to take another step forward, past the heavenly tribulations, and attain the primordial soul realm. And the primordial soul realm could enter and exit the heavenly tribulations, explore the depths of the water, and even travel 80,000 miles. Even if the physical body was destroyed, the primordial soul realm would not be destroyed. Whoosh whoosh in the void, the wind and clouds changed. The special force that enveloped the entire stellar origin mountain seemed to have lost its power and gradually stopped. Not only did the power of the stars become calm again, but the strange wind, dark lightning, and blood rain that enveloped the entire world also seemed to have become thinner. Their power was greatly reduced, and the threat to the various cultivators was also greatly reduced. The only thing that did not change was perhaps the invisible gravity that existed in the entire stellar origin mountain. And Ziyue was in an extremely good mood. The riot is about to end. At most, it will completely stop after half an hour. However, my gains from this stellar source riot are definitely huge. As he flew, Ziyue was also calculating his gains. Flower of Tao, stellar origin divine stone, heavenly vase, inferior grade primordial soul treasure, Tao technique, great primordial soul divine light, and the book of the great Tao. In particular, with the help of the book of the great Tao, he had successfully deduced the complete supreme primordial Tao technique. He had also used the attribute panel to raise the level of his immortal technique to the intermediate golden core realm. Just thinking about it made him excited. Chapter 683. In the beginning, Ziyue's plan was simple. He wanted to enter the 4th level of the Star Origin Sacred Mountain and used the Book of the Great Tao to deduce his own golden core level cultivation method. Apart from that, he was only concerned about the Magnetite King's inheritance, the Magnetite Divine Light. Now, not only did he obtain the Magnetite Divine Light and a golden core level cultivation method, but he also had an unexpected gain. The flower of the Great Tao can help cultivators break through the limits of their acupoints. The Star Origin Sacred Stone can help a golden core cultivator break through the shackles of the golden core quickly, saving a lot of time to accumulate and safely transcend the lightning tribulation. The heaven-wielding bottle and nascent soul-level treasures are all priceless treasures. However, my biggest gain this time should be the Book of the Great Tao. As Zuf flew, he flipped his hand and took out the Book of the Great Tao. The Book of the Great Tao was like a mirror. It didn't look thick, but contained countless mysteries. As long as there was enough energy, it could deduce all cultivation methods and deduce all cultivation methods. With this, perhaps I won't have to worry too much about the nascent soul level cultivation method or even the immortal Tao level cultivation method. Bai Ziyue's eyes flickered with excitement. Ever since he embarked on the path of creating cultivation methods, he was no longer faced with a lack of immortal Tao level. Instead, he faced various cultivation method materials and his own lack of foundation. Without sufficient foundation, without the help of predecessors, and without the Great Tao, it was difficult for him to create a cultivation method that was unique to him and most suitable for him. Even with the help of the attribute panel, it was still the same. In the early stages, he could rely on the help of large sections. However, as his cultivation base increased, his requirements for cultivation methods also increased. Naturally, it was difficult for him to accumulate large amounts of cultivation methods like when he was in the Aperture Awakening or God Realm. He believed that once he reached the nascent soul level, the difficulty of creating cultivation methods would be countless times greater than when he was in the Golden Core Realm. This was because any book of primordial spirit realm cultivation technique was extremely expensive. Moreover, most of them were top sects that did not pass on their secrets. It was extremely difficult to obtain even one, let alone borrow the techniques of predecessors to develop one's own great Tao. It wasn't something that one or two cultivation methods could accomplish. He must have dozens or even hundreds of books. Now that he had the Book of the Great Tao, it was equivalent to saving him from countless accumulations, the development of techniques by his predecessors, and the verification of the Great Tao. As long as he followed the prescribed order, he would be able to achieve something. He would be able to create cultivation techniques, abhijna, and Tao techniques that were suitable for him. The only thing I need to consider is the energy that drives the Book of the Great Tao. Ziyue pondered for a moment. He knew that it would be impossible for him to do it by himself. He would have to rely on a large formation and a high-grade spirit vein. As for the spiritual vein, there is one in the northern underworld wonderland. However, it is only at the early stage of level 4. Moreover, it needs to support the cultivation of many disciples in the wonderland. It will be difficult to build it in a short time. At the very least, it has to be like the star vein in the Star Origin Palace on the Star Origin Divine Mountain, reaching the early stage of the 5th grade. He calculated in his heart, considering that the beginner grade 5-star vein in the Astral Source Palace, which had been accumulating for 30 years, could only support the full operation of the Book of the Great Tao for one day. He was worried that the beginner grade 5-star vein wouldn't be enough for him to use the Book of the Great Tao freely. It had to be at the intermediate stage of level 5, advanced stage of level 5, or even a level 6 spirit vein. Only then would it be possible. As he thought of this, Ziyue felt a little pressured. However, he wasn't too worried. He was still far from being able to use the Book of the Great Tao to create primordial spirit level cultivation techniques. He believed that by then, he would definitely have a solution. Since it's still early and the chaos on the Star Origin Divine Mountain hasn't completely ended, should I go to the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain to take a look? It is said that the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain has a supreme treasure, the Clock of Time. This Clock of Time can control time and maintain an area at 100 or even 1,000 times the speed of normal time. Its effect is even better than my time reversal. As ZUF flew, he couldn't help but mutter to himself. He knew that activating the clock of time would be as difficult as activating the Book of the Great Tao. It would even require a level 6 spirit vein to be able to support it. If he couldn't experience it, he would feel a little regretful. Therefore, he only hesitated for a moment before he quickly turned around and flew in another direction towards the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Although he was only at the intermediate stage of the Golden Core realm, when he used his power, he was no weaker than any primordial spirit realm cultivator. He was already invincible on the 4th level. Although he knew that the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain was much stronger than the 4th level in terms of both the gravity and the strength of the Star Beast, he still wanted to give it a try. After a few minutes, ZUF found the entrance to the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Without much hesitation, he directly stepped in. However, half an hour later, ZUF returned from the 5th level in a sorry state. He was covered in dust and dirt. No wonder there were primordial spirit realm cultivators who died on the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Who would have thought that not only would the gravity on the 5th level reach 500 times stronger, but the environment on the 5th level is also far more violent than the 4th level. There are spatial cracks that are almost everywhere. Even the strength of the Star Beasts has increased tremendously. Although they are all level 5 Star Beasts, the combat strength of the Star Beasts on the 5th level is obviously much stronger. There are many that are comparable to the intermediate stage of the primordial spirit realm. Moreover, there is one that seems to be a level 6 Star Beast King. ZUS sighed as he muttered to himself. If it was only a level 5 Star Beast, even if its combat strength was comparable to the intermediate stage of the primordial spirit realm, with his time reversal, magnetic divine light, and other techniques, he would still be able to put up a fight. However, when he saw a majestic Star Beast in the distance, which was only dozens of kilometers away from him, unleashing a chain of thunder and lightning at him from afar, he was finally horrified. He had to use all of his power to break free from it. He hurriedly retreated in a sorry state. He knew that the Star Beast's strength was definitely not as simple as a level 5 Star Beast. Level 6 Star Beast? Could there be a 6th level in the Star Origin Divine Mountain? ZUF pondered deeply and then quickly came to a conclusion. This was because he combined what the Dream Immortal King had said. There was a suspected primordial spirit realm cultivator in this realm. He believed that even such an existence would not let go of a treasure like the Bell of Time. In the end, just like the Book of the Great Tao, no one had taken it away for tens of thousands of years. This meant that there must be some secrets in the Star Origin Divine Mountain that even such an existence would find difficult to take away. It was not impossible for there to be a 6th or even a 7th level in the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Chapter 684. Of course, he had gained something in the 5th level of the Star Source Sacred Mountain. Before encountering the suspected level 6 Astral Beast, he had attacked consecutively and killed several astral beasts. In addition to his soul energy surging to over 400 million, he'd also stumbled upon a patch of land where Tao flowers grew and plucked several dozen mature ones. Even though the Tao flowers' effect would weaken as the number of Tao flowers increased, the value of dozens of Tao flowers was still astounding. Not long after he returned to the 4th level of the Star Source Sacred Mountain, the oppressive and violent aura in the void was greatly reduced, and then it completely calmed down. It was as if the wind and waves had calmed down, and the air became quiet. The Star Source riot is completely over. ZUF muttered in his heart, but he was not surprised. He did not stay for long and quickly left. It's been 30 years again. This time, the Star Source Sacred Mountain's riot is finally over. I thought that the Celestial Spirit sect, Jiu Sword King, would make a name for himself in this Star Source Sacred Mountain riot. In the end, he died just like that. This is the 2nd King-level expert that the Celestial Spirit sect has lost in the Star Source Sacred Mountain in the past 100 years. The Star Source Sacred Mountain is really worthy of its name of Forbidden Land. This time, it's indeed too surprising for us. The Jiuju Sword King was the chief disciple of the Celestial Spirit Sect's Sovereign Peak. He was a king-level expert, and his strength was in the Golden Core realm. In our Gusha mountain range, only the Dream Immortal King could match him. However, he had perished in the chaos of the Stellar Origin Sacred Mountain this time. Moreover, it was said that the one who killed him was an early-stage Golden Core cultivator called the Wuxia Taoist. Early-stage Golden Core cultivator? Impossible, right? Was he killed by a sneak attack? Also, it was the Wuxia Taoist. Anyway, those who participated in this battle saw it with their own eyes. It can't be wrong. Moreover, the Jiuju Sword King was not killed by a sneak attack. He was killed by the Wuxia Taoist when he and the Dream Immortal King joined forces to attack the Wuxia Taoist. Even Dream Immortal King was no match for him and retreated. By the way, the Dream Immortal King seemed to have mentioned Taoist Wuxia's identity. She said that he was Taoist Dark North. Taoist Dark North? Could it be that he was the one who suddenly rose up in the cloud-piercing mountain range like a startled swan? The one who killed Jindan stage cultivators and snatched food from the tiger's mouth in the hands of many Jindan stage cultivators? He had already broken through to the Golden Core realm. Furthermore, his battle prowess is heaven-defying. Not only did he suppress 2 titled emperors, he even killed the 9 Extinction Sword King. In Star Source Immortal City, as the chaos in Star Source Divine Mountain ended, all sorts of news began to spread rapidly. A series of discussions could be heard among the crowd. Among them, the most eye-catching one was the Heavenly Spirit Sect's Emperor-conferred expert, Jiuju Sword King, who had created a huge commotion and united a dozen Gold Core practitioners. However, it was precisely this revered king that was rumored to have died. Moreover, he had died at the hands of Taoist Wuxia, who was actually Taoist Dark North. This news immediately caused a huge commotion. Who was Taoist Wuxia? No one knew. As for Taoist Dark North, although he was somewhat famous in the cloud-piercing mountain range, he was actually very unfamiliar in the Gusha mountain range. However, at this moment, as some of the Golden Core practitioners who had followed the 9 Extinction Sword King returned from the Star Source Hell, all sorts of news about that place spread, and it immediately caused the news about Ziyue to spread rapidly in Star Source Immortal City. Furthermore, as time passed, this news was known by more and more cultivators who were further away. It could be said that he had become famous in the world. Countless cultivators who heard this news were extremely shocked. They also continued to investigate Ziyue's identity, strength, and methods. Then, they concluded that he was an Emperor-conferred expert, and even at the early Golden Core stage, he already had the terrifying battle prowess of an Emperor-conferred expert. This Taoist Dark North is indeed powerful and should be an Emperor-conferred expert. In fact, he is not weaker than the veteran Emperor-conferred experts and almost has the strength of a half-step primordial spirit. However, he killed the 9 Extinction Sword King so recklessly, which means that he has stepped into the end of his life. He is not far from death. While the others were discussing, in a certain courtyard in Star Source Immortal City, there were 2 cultivators who were sitting opposite each other. These 2 cultivators, one was old and the other young. The old cultivator was dressed in a meticulous Taoist robe, looking very exquisite. On the other hand, the young cultivator was a little sloppy. His hair was unrestrained, like the fur of a lion. His face was young and tender. Only his eyes seemed to have gone through the vicissitudes of life and could see through people's hearts. Around the 2 of them, there seemed to be a layer of inexplicable Taoist ripples, which controlled the surrounding elemental force to be closely arranged and also prevented other cultivators from eavesdropping on their conversation. The one who spoke was the old cultivator. His tone was calm, but he made an assertion. None of the major sects that practice immortal magic would allow their disciples to die for no reason. Even if the news was found to be the fault of their own disciples, the life and death of their own disciples would naturally be decided by their own sect, and outsiders would not be allowed to interfere. This was not a matter of private matters being unclear, but any immortal cultivation sect that was established in the world had a domineering attitude that made their disciples submit wholeheartedly. The Heavenly Spirit sect had the strength to maintain such a domineering attitude. This Taoist North Ming had killed 2 golden core cultivators of the Heavenly Spirit sect, which would naturally infuriate the Heavenly Spirit sect. The enforcement elders would take action, and it was almost inevitable that they would capture him. However, if he knew what was good for him, he might not necessarily die. A king-ranked expert, and one with such limitless potential, is rare even in the Heavenly Spirit sect. They would definitely try to rope him in first, and if they failed, then they would be ruthless. The young cultivator shook his head lightly and said, "That's true. However, although I don't know much about this Taoist North Ming, I reckon that he is not the kind of person who would give in easily. In the end, he would probably still be secretly attacked by the Heavenly Spirit sect." The old cultivator was first certain, and then said firmly, "It would be such a pity if such a talented heaven's favorite were to fall in such a dubious manner." The young cultivator could not help but say, "So, senior brother, what are you planning to do?" The old cultivator's eyes moved, and he had some guesses. "Of course we'll rope him in first, even if we can't rope such a prodigy into our sect. But there won't be any losses if we form a good relationship with him." As the young cultivator spoke, he stood up and then took a step forward. Buzz! The surrounding elemental force fluctuated slightly, and then he completely disappeared. Seeing this, the old cultivator's figure moved slightly, and he disappeared on the spot with the same method. Chapter 685. In the outside world, Ziyue had killed the Heavenly Spirit sect's 9 extremes Sword King in a domineering manner. Many factions had also moved in upon hearing the news. However, in the 9-star Dao Palace branch in Star Source Immortal City, perfected Lord Lu Yang stood in the communication hall with a pale face. He could not believe his ears. Just now, there was a sound from the communication hall. In the 9-star Dao Palace's headquarters, the Vice Palace Master had personally questioned him. Then, he received a piece of shocking news. Ascending Cloud Ancestor had fallen. How is this possible? Ascending Cloud Ancestor was an early-stage primordial spirit realm expert. He was not weak, even among the primordial spirit realm experts. In the entire Gusha mountain range, he could sweep through everything. How could he have fallen? Perfected Lord Lu Liang muttered to himself. He was very clear that Ascending Cloud Ancestor had not come for any of the treasures in Star Source Divine Mountain. It was for Taoist North Ming, who was only at the early stage Golden Core realm. Naturally, he had heard the raucous rumors about Taoist Dark North from the outside world. However, in his opinion, no matter how cunning and powerful Taoist Dark North was, even if he had the battle prowess of a veteran regal king who was half a step into the primordial soul realm, he would at most be at the Golden Core realm. The gap between the realms and the huge leap in strength made it impossible for him to pose any threat to a true primordial soul realm cultivator. However, the result was the opposite of what he had expected. The rumors said that Star Source Divine Mountain had ended and Taoist North Ming had returned safely. However, Ascending Cloud Ancestor had fallen. Could it be that the ancestor was really killed by Taoist North Ming? He could not help but have such a thought, even if he did not want to believe it. After eliminating many impossibilities, this result was more convincing. True Devil Sect, True Devil Mountain. The soul-shaking bell rang, shocking everyone. More than 10 primordial spirit realm cultivators were immediately awakened. What's going on? Someone from our True Devil Sect has fallen? Who is it? It's Junior Brother Kuja. Junior Brother Kuja? He has only reached the primordial spirit realm for less than 100 years. His battle strength is weak, so it is normal for him to be killed. However, who did it? Do you know his recent whereabouts? It is said that he was sent by Mother Shuolian to investigate the deaths of several sect disciples. The location seems to be near Cloud Piercing Mountain Range and Gusha Mountain Range. Cloud Piercing Mountain Range and Gusha Mountain Range? 2 barren lands? Throughout the entire realm, there should only be one primordial soul cultivator, right? Could it be the doing of the supreme elder of the Sky Mist sect? All of this has to do with a Jindan cultivator named Taoist Dark North. Taoist Dark North, a minor golden core cultivator? Could it be that there was someone behind him? Investigate this quickly. I need all the information you have regarding this Taoist Dark North. Also, Kong Mo, you're the fastest and you're the best at tracking. You go. No matter who it is, I will let him know the consequences of offending my true devil sect. Yes. Soon, a cultivator with 2 wings on his back, an aquiline nose, a thunderous mouth, and feathers similar to those of birds flew out from one of the palaces. He responded and spread out his wings. Then, he abruptly lifted them up. Whoosh! He quickly disappeared from where he was. With just 2 movements, his figure appeared 100 miles away. His speed was astonishingly fast. Star Origin Divine Mountain, Ziyue, stood in the distance and looked at the Star Origin Divine Mountain from afar. It towered into the clouds and was incomparably heavy. Just by standing there, Hung gave off an endless sense of deterrence. Especially within it, the special power that could almost affect the surrounding Great Tao rules caused the gravity within a radius of hundreds of miles to be affected. Even the air became much more viscous. This Star Origin Divine Mountain definitely contains a huge secret. The 5th level is very likely not its limit. There must be a 6th or even a 7th level. In addition, the entire Star Origin Divine Mountain is too vast. However, the interior is a space of its own, as if there's an invisible hand controlling everything. There's also the power of the array circulating inside. No wonder people would guess that the entire Star Origin Divine Mountain is actually a Dharma treasure refined by an ancient almighty. Combined with this incident, it's not impossible. Ziyue couldn't help but have some guesses. However, if the entire Star Origin Divine Mountain is really a Dharma treasure, then what level would this Dharma treasure be? And to be able to drive this Star Origin Divine Mountain and use it to attack the enemy, how powerful would the cultivator be? Ziyue thought in his heart and was shocked. Immediately, the trace of pride that rose from killing the 2 primordial soul realm true cultivators was completely dispelled. However, he quickly changed his mind. Compared to the yearning for the ancient almighty and the immortal Tao, what he valued more was the matter in front of him. This trip to the Star Origin Divine Mountain has ended successfully. The harvest is huge, but the trouble caused is also not small. Heavenly Spirit Sect, True Devil Sect, 9-star Tao Palace. Thinking of the major forces that he had offended this time, even if he said that he didn't care when facing the Dream Immortal King, he still felt a little pressure in his heart. Extremely important figures of the 3 major immortal Tao forces have fallen in my hands. No matter what the reason is, they will definitely make a move on me. Among the 3 major immortal Tao forces, the True Devil Sect is far away in the Sky Devil territory. Even if Primordial Soul Realm true cultivators were to rush there, it would take at least 10 days to half a month. Although the Heavenly Spirit Sect is also in the Firmament territory, the Purple-Green Mountains where the Heavenly Spirit Sect is located is not only huge, but also very far away. In the short term, I don't need to worry too much. On the other hand, the 9-star Tao Palace. Ziyue analyzed carefully. The 9-star Tao Palace is very powerful and has branches all over the major immortal cities in the Firmament territory. They can mobilize a group of cultivators to attack me at any time. Most importantly, because I joined the 9-star Tao Palace back then, I left a drop of true blood in the 9-star Tao Palace. There will definitely be cultivators with heaven-defying means who can use it to calculate my position and find me. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart and reveal a trace of seriousness. I have to make more preparations. Otherwise, even if my strength can quickly increase, I won't be able to withstand the attacks of a mid-primordial soul realm true cultivator or even a late primordial soul realm true cultivator. Therefore, the most important thing for me to do next is to accumulate soul energy and quickly increase my immortal Tao realm. The immortal Tao realm of the mid-golden core realm and the battle strength of the early primordial soul realm are not safe for me. Perhaps only by increasing his strength to the late golden core realm or to the peak golden core realm in a short period of time would he have the strength to protect himself in this crisis. Of course, if the sect master of the heavenly spirit sect, the sect master of the heavenly demon sect, or even the palace master of the 9-star Tao palace attacked him, he estimated that even if he increased his immortal Tao realm to the peak golden core realm in a short period of time, he would not be able to escape unscathed. Chapter 686. Apart from having to raise my cultivation level, I can't let go of my means of fighting my enemies. With my great abilities, I'll naturally be at a disadvantage against golden core cultivators of the same cultivation level. But against primordial soul cultivators, I'll be a little powerless. I'll have to use Tao techniques. Ziyue knew where his shortcomings were. It was just that the heaven patching technique and the primary magnetic divine light would be extremely difficult against primordial soul cultivators who were getting stronger and stronger. It was the same even with the 9 extinction godly sword that he hadn't mastered yet. Just like when he faced the rising cloud ancestor previously, even though his offensive techniques were far superior to his opponent was able to dodge his attacks by a hair's breadth due to his advantage in speed. Even if he used the time reversal ability in his attribute panel, it wouldn't be of any help. This was because his opponent's speed was far superior to his. Perhaps I can use the Book of the Great Tao to improve my great abilities one by one. Even if I can't raise the Thunder Escape Light, 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword, and other techniques to the level of Tao techniques. If I can raise them to the level of 1 sword breaking all techniques, it'll be good too. Ziyue muttered to himself. He knew how difficult it was to obtain Tao techniques. Tao technique inheritances weren't like spells and abilities, which were usually only possessed by top sects or even super sections. It was extremely difficult to obtain them. At the very least, if Ziyue was alone, he would rarely have the chance to obtain an inheritance of this level. For example, the 9 Extinction Divine Sword and the first Magnetic Divine Light could only be considered as unexpected surprises and could not be obtained frequently. That was why he set his sights on the newly obtained Book of the Great Tao. Then, after pondering for a moment, he quickly began to act. This time, there was no lack of primordial soul cultivators among the several cultivators I killed. It also allowed me to accumulate a lot of spirit stones. My harvest this time alone has reached 5 million high-grade spirit stones. In addition to the 7 million high-grade spirit stones I originally had, I have a total of 12 million high-grade spirit stones. As for me, using the Book of the Great Tao consumes an enormous amount of energy every breath of time. 12 million high-grade spirit stones won't be able to sustain it for long. Bai Ziyue counted all his gains this time, especially the spirit stones. At this time, he took out all of them and put them aside. All of a sudden, a small mountain of spirit stones appeared in front of him. Book of the Great Tao, go. Ziyue didn't hesitate. He stretched out his hand and tossed it slightly. The Book of the Great Tao quickly floated in the air. As Ziyue's pure purple elixir essence was rapidly depleting, a ball of grayish spiritual light floated along with the Book of the Great Way and landed on a pile of spirit stones. Chi. Under the effect of special force, a large number of spirit stones were consumed. The Book of the Great Law seemed to have regained its spirituality, and it shone with a unique light. Without daring to hesitate, Bai Ziyue sent his divine sense over with a single thought. Boom! In an instant, the sound of the great Tao that he had experienced before, as well as the scene of thousands of great Taos appearing before his eyes, was imprinted in his mind again. Under the effect of this special force, Ziyue's thoughts and soul seemed to have been sublimated, and they became extremely clear. However, when he carefully sensed his own state, he felt like he had 1,000 things to do, and he didn't know where to start. As expected, with the help of spirit stones and other external objects, I can also use the Book of the Great Tao. Although the consumption is a bit high, I can finally use it to a certain extent. Ziyue knew that the Book of the Great Tao had begun to operate, So he quickly turned his gaze to the attribute panel. Enlightenment time began. In an instant, Ziue's thoughts, insights, and strange ideas quickly collided in his mind. Then, they combined with the thousands of great Daos in the Book of the Great Tao. Boom! Involuntarily, the questions that troubled his thoughts and the problems he encountered in his cultivation were all answered in an instant. Furthermore, he quickly understood them thoroughly. This feeling was too intoxicating, and it also made him extremely happy. However, he quickly collected his thoughts and recovered from the joy. He hadn't forgotten the purpose of using the Book of the Great Tao again, to optimize each of the great mystiques so that they could reach the level of breaking all techniques with a single sword. I wonder if these 12 million superior spirit stones are enough to support me to optimize all of my great mystiques. At this thought, Ziue quickly settled his thoughts and focused on his various great mystiques. With such a huge consumption, even someone as wealthy as him would not be able to support it for long. First, Ziue planned to optimize the speed Dao technique, the Thunderbolt Escape Light. The perfected Thunderbolt Escape Light was indeed extremely fast, and it would at least allow him to dominate the Golden Core realm. However, compared to the Primordial Spirit realm cultivators, the difference was very obvious. Even Patriarch Bitter Lettuce and Ascending Cloud Patriarch did not possess any speed Dao techniques, but they were still slightly faster than him just by using the power of their primordial spirits. He naturally wanted to make up for this shortcoming as soon as possible. The Thunderbolt Escape Light includes quite a number of acupoints, and it has reached a total of 1,197. It is only 3 acupoints away from achieving a supreme great mystique. It is only 99 acupoints away from achieving a perfect great mystique. However, its speed has not reached its limit. For example, the interpretation of speed in the lightning, the obsession with destruction, and the wanton violence when the lightning is released are all so perfect. Ziue immediately began to deduce. With the help of the Book of the Great Tao and the Attribute panel, all kinds of wonderful ideas, all kinds of extremely complex and perfect mysteries of heaven and earth, as well as the great Tao rules of lightning, appeared before his eyes. Then, bit by bit, with the original Thunderbolt Escape Light as the blueprint, all kinds of wonderful ideas and theories of the great Tao as the basis, rapidly collided and fused, integrating and deducing. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, soon 10 breaths passed. That's right, this is speed. The speed of the lightning is extremely fast. Oh, so that's it. I was still lacking by a bit. So it turns out that this place is indeed much more intricate if it is connected like this. Just a bit more, just a bit more. Ziue was looking forward to it. His expression was sometimes confused and sometimes happy. Bit by bit, he increased the progress of his deduction. 80 breaths, 90 breaths, 100 breaths. Finally, after 100 breaths, Ziue's eyes lit up. It's done. I have finally completed the deduction of the Thunderbolt Escape Light. It has reached a perfect great mystique that is comparable to the one sword to destroy all techniques. It includes 1,296 acupoints. Its power has also increased tremendously. It can at least increase my speed by more than 30%. Ziue was excited. Chapter 687. 30% didn't seem like much. However, by Ziue's speed was already extremely fast to begin with. Now that his speed was increased by 30%, it immediately became extremely shocking. Now that I think about it, even if my current speed isn't as fast as the Rising Cloud ancestor, I'm not any slower than the Bitter Chalice ancestor. Ziue compared silently and felt a little satisfied. This was because this would allow his speed to reach the level of the Primordial Spirit realm. Compared to the half-step Primordial Spirit realm before, this was a qualitative leap. Using the Book of the Great Tao for 100 breaths of time to optimize the Thunderbolt Escape technique into a perfect great mystique is still worth it. However, correspondingly, I've also used up 1,000,000 upper-grade spirit stones, which is equivalent to 10,000 upper-grade spirit stones. It can only support the operation of the Book of the Great Tao for a single breath of time. Ziyue's eyes flickered. He felt a little pained. The consumption of spirit stones was indeed significant. However, Bai Ziyue was clearly aware that this was the improvement and perfection of his strength, combat strength, and offensive ability. It was the guarantee that he would be able to survive in the immortal art world and safely pass through the numerous dangers. So no matter how great the consumption was or how great the price he had to pay was, he wouldn't be stingy. Continue. Without much hesitation, Ziyue quickly began to perfect it again. This time, he chose the great mystique, the godly spiritual physique. This was a great mystique that could enhance his overall battle strength in all aspects. It would be of great help to his strength. Without the support of this godly spiritual physique, his strength would immediately be greatly reduced. It would also be impossible for him to defeat immortals and slay primordial spirits. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. After another 100 breaths, the godly spiritual physique was completely perfected and upgraded to the perfect great mystique level. Immediately after, Ziyue didn't stop. He continued to optimize the great magnetic slash, heaven and earth in the sleeve, great forbidden spirit technique, 5 Emperor Sky, sealing sword, 5 Emperor Divine royal robe, and other great mystiques to the perfect great mystique level. After nearly 900 breaths, Ziyue took the initiative to stop using the Book of the Great Tao. He also woke up from his enlightenment time. In just 900 breaths time, I've spent 9 million superior grade spirit stones to improve the martial arts to the perfect martial arts level. Not only has its power increased greatly, but it has also increased my strength by a large margin. With my current strength, if I were to face the rising cloud ancestor, I might not even need to use the special environment of the spatial crack to trap and kill him. Ziyue muttered in his heart. He was slightly excited. If Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's strength was considered to be at the 3rd tier of the early primordial spirit realm, then Patriarch Rising Cloud would be at the 2nd tier of the early primordial spirit realm. Those regal experts who had 9 golden core shackles at the golden core realm would be at the 1st tier of the early primordial spirit realm after ascending to the primordial spirit realm. Ziyue was now confident that he had the strength to kill the rising cloud great ancestor, which also meant that his combat prowess had been completely elevated to the 1st tier of the early primordial spirit realm. After all, a battle between cultivators of the same cultivation level might be able to determine the victor, but it was not so easy to truly kill the other party. At the very least, if he could not defeat the other party, it would not be difficult to escape. For example, Ziyue and the Rising Cloud Ancestor were both at the 2nd tier of the early primordial spirit realm. Even if Ziyue's combat prowess was slightly weaker, it was almost impossible for the Rising Cloud Ancestor to kill him. In the end, Ziyue had to rely on external forces to kill the Rising Cloud Ancestor. The increase in my combat prowess is certainly worth celebrating. However, the price is indeed a little too high. 9 million upper-grade spirit stones directly turned into dust. Ziyue was excited. His gaze fell on the pile of spirit stone powder that was taller than a person and the remaining 3 million upper-grade spirit stones. Deep in his heart, he felt a little pained. It should be known that even an immortal cultivation sect like the Qingshu sect would find it unbearable to spend 9 million upper-grade spirit stones rashly. They would need to scrimp for several years to survive. I might as well not keep the remaining 3 million upper-grade spirit stones. Although my current immortal cultivation realm has reached the middle golden elixir realm, to break through to the late golden elixir realm, I still need to consume 900 million spirit stones. Although I have a lot of spirit stones now, it's only a little more than 400 million, which is far from enough. As for spirit stones, they can also be used as a ladder for my advancement and increase my cultivation speed. Ziyue looked at the remaining spirit stones and quickly made a decision. Therefore, with a thought, he swept his divine sense slightly. Chi! Among the pile of spirit stones, a total of 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones silently turned into powder. In an instant, a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi rose. The terrifying and dense heaven and earth spiritual chi was suddenly released, causing the air to slightly distort. Traces of strange phenomena were also produced. In just a short period of time, plants and trees on the ground were uprooted from the watering of this dense and pure energy. They grew rapidly and continuously broke through the limit of grade, evolving from ordinary grass to spiritual materials. Even though most of them were burned to death because they couldn't bear enough power, the plants that were just as resilient were able to bear the water and become spiritual materials. After they were upgraded, their grades rose all the way from the early first grade to the middle first grade, the late first grade, and even the early second grade. Ziyue naturally did not care about this. He directly operated his golden elixir realm cultivation method, the supreme primordial Tao skill. Boom! The terrifying and dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth immediately rushed into Ziyue's body as if it had received a strong summon. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Ziyue's body was like a bottomless pit. In just a few breaths, the heaven and earth spiritual chi contained in the 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones was completely absorbed and swallowed. Moreover, within a radius of 10 miles, the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the air surged directly towards him like moths to a flame. The spirit stones collided, causing turbulence, and even the wind and clouds rolled up, rustling. The clouds and mist seemed to be unable to withstand this suction and quickly dispersed. Immediately, there was no cloud in the surroundings for thousands of miles. Ziyue's first official cultivation of the supreme primordial Tao skill had caused a huge commotion. In just a few breaths, Ziyue had completely absorbed and digested the energy contained in the 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones and transformed it into his purple elixir essence, causing his purple elixir golden elixir to become more stable and larger, and its energy to become more turbulent. In fact, the supreme primordial Tao technique that Ziyue had created was originally derived from his divine realm technique, the heaven-swallowing divine transformation spell. Moreover, because the level of the technique was higher, the mysteries it contained were more exquisite. Naturally, the absorption and transformation of energy was much more ferocious and rapid. It was normal for it to have such an effect. Chapter 688. The energy within 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones was consumed and transformed by him. Ziyue took the opportunity to look at the attribute panel. The middle stage of the supreme primordial art has increased from 10% to 11%. That's equivalent to 100,000 upper spirit stones only increasing the progress by 1%. In other words, 3 million upper spirit stones is only enough for me to increase the progress of this cultivation method to 40%. If I want to break through to the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm, I'll need at least 6 million upper spirit stones or 600 million points of soul energy. Ziyue made a comparison and quickly came to a conclusion. Although he knew that the further he progressed, the greater the consumption of his cultivation method, when he truly realized this, he still felt waves of pressure in his heart. This was only the consumption from the middle stage of the golden elixir realm to the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm. If he wanted to reach the complete stage of the golden elixir realm from the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm, the consumption of energy would be even more terrifying. However, although he felt the pressure, Ziyue's cultivation method did not stop at all. After completely absorbing and transforming the previous energy, his divine sense crushed another pile of 100,000 upper spirit stones into dust. The terrifying spiritual chi of heaven and earth rose again and was quickly absorbed and transformed by him. After one time, another time, Ziyue did not stop and continued to cultivate. As he continued to cultivate, the pile of spirit stones continued to decrease. Boom, boom, boom. When the last pile of spirit stones was completely transformed into the pure purple elixir chi in his body, Ziyue slowly opened his eyes. As expected, my cultivation method has increased to 40% of the middle stage of the supreme primordial art. Although my strength has not increased by much, the pure purple elixir chi in my body is indeed much more vigorous than before. Even the pure purple golden elixir in my body has become slightly larger. Under the nourishment of the golden elixir, my soul has become more solid and powerful. It's very comfortable. Correspondingly, my spirit stones have been completely used up. Fortunately, in addition to the spirit stones, I also obtained a large amount of star beast materials, star cores, heavenly treasures, and other refining materials during my trip to the Star Source Sacred Mountain. If I sell it, I should be able to get a lot of spirit stones. Ziyue let out a sigh. He waved his hand and collected the mystical stone powder around him, before tossing it into the northern underworld chamber. Although the spirit stone powder no longer contained any spiritual energy, it was made of a special material that naturally had the ability to absorb spiritual energy. Over the years, it was possible that it could be transformed into a spirit stone mine. Then, Ziyue did not stay there for long. Lightning flashed on his body, and he quickly streaked across the sky. With a few flashes, his figure appeared 100 miles away. His speed was astonishingly fast, but soon he paused and looked into the distance. There were two cultivators, one old and one young. Both of them were late-stage Golden Core realm cultivators. The old man was dressed in a brocade Taoist robe and was meticulously groomed, while the young man was slovenly. At this moment, the two of them charged towards him like lightning. When they were 30 miles away from him, the two of them paused for a moment. The old man cupped his hands towards Ziyue and said, "Are you the Taoist priest North Underworld who defeated two regal realm cultivators and caused one of them to die and the other to flee?" Ziyue's achievements in the Xingyuan Divine Mountain were not known by many except for the fact that he had killed two primordial soul realm cultivators because it was too secretive. However, the fact that he had killed the Jiuju Sword King and forced the Dream Immortal King to flee had already spread. And because of this, he was crowned a regal realm cultivator and was publicly known as the Dark North Underworld King. Ziyue frowned in surprise. He looked at the two of them indifferently and asked, "Who are you?" "My name is Su Zhong, and this is my senior brother Liu Dao. We are from Mount Qingxian. You may not have heard of us, but I want to say that 10,000 years ago, Mount Qingxian was an organization that was as famous as the 9-star Dao Palace. Although we are not as powerful as we used to be, we are still one of the top 10 immortal powers in the entire astral realm." The old man pointed at the young man and introduced him. Then he opened his mouth to speak. "We're here because we want to establish a good relationship with you. If you are willing, we would like to invite you to join Mount Qingxian. We are not limited to cultivation techniques, treasures, cultivation resources, and even cultivation techniques that can lead to the peak of the primordial soul realm. Moreover, you have killed the Jiuju Sword King of the Celestial Spirit Sect and caused a lot of trouble. The Celestial Spirit Sect will definitely be angered and send out powerful cultivators to hunt you down. Although you are not weak, I believe that the Celestial Spirit Sect will definitely send out a primordial soul realm cultivator to hunt you down after knowing your strength. A primordial soul realm cultivator is much more powerful than a golden elixir realm cultivator like me. Even if you are powerful, you will not be a match for them. However, if you choose to join Mount Qingxian, we will protect you. Even if the Celestial Spirit Sect is one of the super sects, they would not dare to act rashly against us." Liu Yudao chimed in from the side. "Is that so?" Ziyue responded. He had heard of Mount Qingxian. Mount Qingxian and the 9-Star Palace were both assassin organizations. In their heyday, they could indeed compete with the 9-Star Palace. However, because the two powers were similar in nature, they were naturally at odds with each other. When the two sides met, it was either you die or I live. Therefore, 10,000 years ago, the two sides broke out in a great battle that lasted 1,000 years. The result of that battle was needless to say. Mount Qingxian was no match for the 9-Star Palace. Not only did they lose many powerful cultivators, but they also lost many precious treasures and spirit veins. Decline was inevitable. Moreover, the Nine-Star Palace was wary of Mount Qingxian and never gave up on hunting down the disciples of Mount Qingxian. Therefore, Mount Qingxian became very low-key, and there was very little information about it in the outside world. After 10,000 years, apart from cultivators who had come into contact with Mount Qingxian or powerful cultivators of the top sex, very few people in the outside world had even heard of Mount Qingxian. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. As a professional assassin organization, Mount Qingxian's stealth and assassination techniques were actually above the Nine-Star Palace. Naturally, they had preserved a lot of power. Now that 10,000 years had passed and Mount Qingxian had recuperated, it was obvious that they had recovered some of their vitality. Perhaps they could not compete with the Nine-Star Palace, but whether it was the number of powerful cultivators or the characteristics of their assassin organization, they were definitely a target that many sects and factions were wary of. Chapter 689. Naturally, Qingxian Mountain would be able to resist the pressure from Celestial Spirit's sect and protect Ziyue. But I'm not interested. Ziyue's face was very calm. Qingxian Mountain was indeed an excellent choice. In the entire astral world of immortal sorcery, it was enough to be ranked in the top 10. Even if it was at the bottom of the top 10, it was still very important. If it was not necessary, the other superpowers would not dare to act rashly. If he joined Qingxian Mountain, it would save him a lot of trouble, and he could even safely get through this crisis. However, he had already suffered a loss once. Didn't Nine-Star Dao Palace also repeatedly try to rope him in? And the result? Because of the unusual strength he displayed, it immediately attracted Immortal Qian Yuan's attention, and he schemed to make a move against him. And he believed that although the news of him killing primordial spirit cultivators at Golden Core had not spread, it would not be long before the other superpowers would know. After all, the death of 2 primordial spirit cultivators was a fact. Even if the Dream Immortal King did not say anything and there were no witnesses, as long as some experts who were proficient in backtracking or secret searching techniques arrived at the scene, they would be able to discover something. Such cultivators might be rare in ordinary sects, but the top 10 superpowers would definitely nurture them. When they discovered Ziyue's heaven-defying method, anyone would be able to see that there was something unusual about it. They would know that Ziyue must be hiding secrets or treasures. It was hard to guarantee that someone would not be able to resist making a move against him. Qingxian Mountain and Nine-Star Dao Palace were assassin organizations. There was no morality at all. Naturally, they would not lack people like Immortal Qian Yuan. He would naturally agree rashly and put himself in danger. He didn't agree. He refused. Liu Yudao and Su Zhong's expressions changed. In their view, Ziyue's current situation was definitely worrying. Joining Qingxian Mountain was the best choice. After all, the threat of Celestial Spirit sect was not something that ordinary immortal sorcery forces could resist. If Ziyue wanted to survive, he could only choose to join the superpowers. In the firmament territory, other than Qingxian Mountain, there were only 5 other superpowers: the Nine-Star Dao Palace, the Celestial Spirit sect, the Myriad sect, and the Great Dao Chamber of Commerce. Although the Great Path Chamber of Commerce's influence spread throughout the firmament territory, its headquarters was in the True Law domain, where there were only a few primordial soul realm cultivators. Due to its commercial nature, it generally did not participate in the disputes between the various forces. As for the Myriad Manifestation sect and the Heavenly Spirit sect, they were both superpowers. Although there was no lack of competition between them, they naturally wouldn't interfere too much for the sake of Taoist Dark North. Even the Nine-Star Dao Palace, as disciples of Azure Mystic Mountain, they naturally knew that Ziyue had killed true Lord Qian Yuan. They knew that even if the Nine-Star Dao Palace did not kick him while he was down, they would not easily rope him in. Because of this, they appear to be in disbelief. If it's just the Celestial Spirit sect, your Qingxian Mountain might be able to withstand the pressure and not be afraid of offending them. But if I were to say that besides the Heavenly Spirit sect, I have also provoked the 9-star Tao Palace and the true devil sect. What would you do? Ziyue looked at the two of them with a faint smile and said, 9 stars of the Tao Palace? True devil sect? Su Zhong was slightly taken aback. Lu Yudao said confidently, is it because you killed 9-star Tao Palace's true monarch Qin Yuan? To my Qingxin Mountain, this is nothing. We and them are like fire and water. When there are too many debts, there is no need to worry. As for the true devil sect, although I don't know the reason why you have become enemies with the true devil sect far away in the demon domain, if Elder Taihing of my Azure Mystic Mountain is willing to step in, it should not be difficult to resolve the misunderstanding. It is not as simple as a misunderstanding. This time, in addition to the Jiuju Sword King, the Rising Cloud ancestor of the 9-star Tao Palace, and the Bitter Leaf ancestor of the True Devil Sect have also appeared in the Stellar Origin Divine Mountain. But now they are all dead. I think that if the 3 superpowers were to test the pressure together, your Azure Mystic Mountain would not be able to withstand it, right? Moreover, even if you could withstand it, do you have the right to make the decision? Ziyue looked at the two of them with a mocking expression. Their expressions changed again, and their eyes widened as they looked at him with incomparable shock. Rising Cloud Ancestor, Bitter Leaf Ancestor, they had all appeared in the Stellar Origin Divine Mountain, and they were dead? Since Ziyue said that he had offended the 9-star Tao Palace and the True Devil Sect, didn't that mean that even if these 2 primordial spirit realm experts did not die at his hands, they definitely had a huge connection with him? Could it be they died at the hands of Dao Senior? Lu Yudao was completely stunned and spoke with some difficulty. Then, as if he was afraid of angering Ziyue, he quickly changed the way he addressed him. Ziyue smiled faintly and did not explain anything. Instead, he continued, although I will not join the Azure Mystic Mountain. However, it is not impossible for us to cooperate. Cooperation? Lu Yudao was slightly stunned. That's right, cooperation. This time, I have offended the 3 superpowers, so I naturally will not choose to sit still and wait for death. Therefore, this time, I have decided to take the initiative and strike first to gain the upper hand. As long as I can hurt them and injure them to the point that no one will dare to make a move against me. Moreover, because the Celestial Spirit Sect and the True Devil Sect are thousands of miles away, my first target is the 9-star Tao Palace. I think that your Azure Mystic Mountain would be very happy to see me make a move against the 9-star Tao Palace, right? Ziyue smiled faintly as he spoke. This was also a decision he had made at the last minute when he heard that the other party was the second-ranked assassin organization in the Immortal Tao world. He was naturally very clear about the situation he was about to encounter. Sitting still and waiting for death had never been his style. Therefore, from the beginning, he had decided to take the initiative and strangle the danger in the cradle. However, he was alone and his information was obscured. Even if he could find the various branches of the 9-star Tao Palace, if he rashly plunged into them, it was very likely that he would fall into a trap or run into a mid-late primordial spirit realm expert. Although he was now strong and was confident that he was not weaker than any early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator, if he were to face a mid-late primordial spirit realm cultivator, he had no confidence at all. Even if he used all his means, it would be difficult to escape the pursuit of such an expert. However, if Azure Mystic Mountain provided him with information and knew in advance the strength and number of experts in the various branches of the 9-star Tao Palace, or the Celestial Spirit Sect, and the Heavenly Devil Sect, he would be able to eliminate some of his worries and be able to kill and destroy as he wished. In this way, not only would he be able to achieve his goal of revenge, but he would also be able to obtain a steady stream of spiritual energy and cultivation resources. He would use battle to nurture battle and continuously improve his immortal Tao strength and realm. It was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Chapter 690. In a dense forest, 3 people appeared without a sound. One of them was dressed in a white Taoist robe. His gaze was indifferent, and although his aura was calm, there was an uncontrollable sharpness about him. It was Ziyue. As for the other 2, One of them looked young and frivolous, but deep in his eyes, one could see the vicissitudes of life. He was Lu Yudao, a cultivator of Mount Qingxian. The other person was dressed neatly and meticulously. He looked like an old man, and was Su Zhong, a disciple of Mount Qingxian. He was also the junior brother of the young cultivator, Lu Yudao. At this moment, both Lu Yudao and Su Zhong appeared very obedient as they looked respectfully at Ziyue. Senior, you may not know, the 9-star Dao Palace has set up many sub-palaces in the various immortal cities. But in reality, those are only the mission distribution points of the 9-star Dao Palace. Apart from those responsible for maintaining operations, there are not many experts. Of course, there are also relatively few treasures. The true core of the 9-star Dao Palace will always be the Dao Palace. Not only are there countless treasures in the Dao Palace, but there are also many legacies left behind. This is the foundation of the 9-star Dao Palace. It is also the place that the 9-star Dao Palace values the most. Lu Yudao explained in a respectful manner. Even though Ziyue's realm of immortal arts was actually not as good as his, he had already reached the late stage of the Golden Elixir realm and was not far from the peak of the Golden Elixir realm. As for Ziyue, he was at most in the middle stage of the Golden Elixir realm. However, the battle results that Ziyue had displayed in the Xingyuan Divine Mountain were enough to shock the entire immortal arts world. The sect masters of the major immortal sects, and even the master of Mount Qingxian, were impressed. In particular, he had heard that Ziyue had vaguely revealed the death of the Rising Cloud ancestor and the Bitter Chalice ancestor, and now he had confirmed this from the inner circle of Mount Qingxian. Although he was still unsure if the two early primordial spirit stage ancestors had really died by Ziyue's hands, he knew that he had a great deal to do with it. When he thought of how the other party was not only publicly acknowledged as the Dark North Lord, but also had the strength to threaten primordial soul realm experts, he felt even more reverence for the other party. This is the location of a Dao Palace branch of the 9-star Dao Palace that we discovered. Su Zhong also chimed in. He was truly a little excited. The environment here seems a bit ordinary. Ziyue looked around. The terrain of the mountains and rivers seemed flat, and even the spiritual qi of heaven and earth seemed somewhat thin. If not for Lu Yudao and Su Zhong swearing that this was a Dao Palace branch of the 9-star Dao Palace, he would never have believed it, much less found it. It's precisely because it's ordinary that it's so secretive. Any superpower would have such a secret place. This was the reason why they were able to exist for eternity. Take our Mount Qingxian as an example. The original mountain gate of our headquarters was breached, and the current generation of strong cultivators suffered heavy casualties. Even the current master of Mount Qingxian was severely injured and died within 100 years. If not for those secret places being used one after another, how could they have recovered their vitality and come out again? Lu Yudao continued, and this secret Dao Palace branch of the 9-star Dao Palace was only confirmed after many investigations. Its main location is hidden at the end of the forest, at the bottom of the huge lake. At the bottom of the lake, there is a water cave, and in the depths of the water cave, there is an area of 100 feet separated by a water-repelling pearl. In that area, there is a teleportation formation. Only by using this teleportation formation can you truly step into the Dao Palace branch. That's right, there's actually a poisonous flood dragon living in that water cave. Although this poisonous flood dragon is only at the intermediate stage of the Golden Elixir realm, the venom that it spits out is so strong that even an advanced stage Golden Elixir realm cultivator would be severely injured and find it unbearable. Senior, you have to be careful on this trip. A poisonous flood dragon is not a big deal. However, are you sure about the number and strength of the strong cultivators in this Dao Palace? As Ziyue spoke, his gaze fell lightly on the other party. If there was even the slightest fluctuation in the other party's spirit, he would not hesitate to abandon this mission and capture the other party. If necessary, he would even use the soul-searching technique to investigate the other party's secrets. Senior, please rest assured. Although we of the Green Mystic Mountain cannot say for sure how many secret places the nine-star Tao Palace has set up in the firmament territory. However, after discovering the secret place, we naturally carried out a lot of investigations. What we can confirm is that the person overseeing this place is an elder of the nine-star Tao Palace, Liu Changqing. Senior, this Liu Changqing is a true early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator and a veteran who has been in the early stage for 700 years. He is not weak, and with the power of the formation in that secret place, even an intermediate stage primordial spirit realm cultivator would find it difficult to do anything to him in a short period of time. Senior, why don't we discuss this at length? Otherwise, I'm afraid, Liu Yudao asked hesitantly. No matter. I'm leaving. Remember, don't forget the things I asked you to help me collect. Ziyue waved his hand and glanced indifferently at the two of them. Then, his body moved and the gravitational shadow domain was unleashed. In an instant, the void fell silent. His figure, however, seemed to have disappeared all of a sudden, disappearing without a trace. What a powerful concealment technique. This technique is even better than the void concealment of our Green Mystic Mountain. Su Zhong was shocked and said with a slightly pale face, "More than that, you must know that I have cultivated the mystic spirit true eyes, the great magic of the divine eye, and cultivated it to the small success realm. However, even if I used this great magic to the extreme, I still could not find any trace of Senior Dark North. It is obvious that his concealment technique has reached an incomparably high level. Perhaps only a true primordial spirit realm cultivator can see through it." Liu Yudao sighed with emotion, and his heart gradually relaxed. Taoist Dark North. I really did not expect that fellow Taoist Rising Cloud would fall so quickly. Moreover, he died at the hands of a little fellow who is not even in the primordial spirit realm. In a grotto heaven, there was a huge palace. At the top of the palace, there was a cultivator who spoke with emotion and a complicated look in the depths of his eyes. As an elder of the nine-star Tao Palace, Liu Changqing was instinctively suspicious of Ziyue's killing of the Rising Cloud ancestor. It doesn't matter whether that Taoist Dark North went against the odds and killed fellow Taoist Rising Cloud. The next time, he will be dead for sure. I just don't know who the higher-ups will send to deal with him. Liu Changqing murmured, but a trace of anticipation flashed in his eyes. He had been overseeing this place for more than 100 years and rarely left. He had long wanted to go out and gain experience. Chapter 691. Therefore, he hoped that his superiors would send him out to deal with Taoist Northming. Apart from being extremely confident in his own strength, he was also very curious about Bai Ziyue's strength. Bai Ziyue was able to defeat 2 regal emperors at the early stage of the Golden Core realm, causing one of the 9 Extinction Sword King and the other one to flee. He also guessed that Ziyue must have some secret, a huge secret. From his point of view, regardless of what cultivation method Bai Ziyue practiced, even if he had condensed an extreme violet golden core when he formed his gold core, it was impossible for him to have such heaven-defying strength at the early or middle stage of the gold core stage. Not to mention that he killed 2 primordial soul realm cultivators. Treasure? Or the legendary spirit treasure? Liu Changqing murmured with a hint of passion in his eyes. No cultivator could ignore the effect of spirit treasure. At this moment, one of his subordinates suddenly rushed over and said with a serious face, "Supreme Lord, Junior Brother Zhang just sent a message from the entrance. To be honest, a cultivator has appeared around the Mirror Lake. He seems to be the Taoist Northming, the legendary Taoist Northming." The Taoist Northming? Liu Changqing's expression changed. He frowned and said, "It's really him? How dare he come here? How did he know the location of our Tao Palace branch? Did he come here by accident or on purpose?" I couldn't believe it at first, so I asked Junior Brother Zhang to continue investigating. But after using the outer array to spy on the images, plus we have a way to identify his aura, we were able to confirm it. Also, his concealment technique is very advanced. If we hadn't set up the illusory cloud ripple array in the Mirror Lake, We wouldn't have been able to detect anything that has a shape unless it's powerful enough to affect the laws of heaven and earth. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to detect his presence. But because of this, I'm certain that he knows the exact location of our Tao Palace branch and came here on purpose. I just don't know where he got the information from. That cultivator said with certainty. Is he really here for revenge? How audacious. You don't know life from death. Lu Changqing growled, but there was a hint of excitement in the depths of his eyes. One can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find it by chance. Originally, he had been planning on requesting permission from his superiors to act against Taoist Dark North. In the end, the other party came knocking on his door. Although he did not know why the other party was so confident that they dared to barge into their Tao Palace branch. Such a secret place would have at least one primordial soul realm cultivator guarding it. If a golden core realm cultivator set foot in this place, he would be as good as dead. However, this was a good thing for him. In this way, he would be able to monopolize any treasures or spirit treasures that might be on the other party, especially the possibility of the existence of a spirit treasure. Just thinking about it made him excited. Go, prepare to defend against the enemy. It just so happens that I want to see how much your strength has improved during this period. Then Lu Changqing said in a low voice, "Don't worry." Yes. The cultivator respectfully responded and quickly went to prepare. This must be the giant lake that Lu Yudao spoke of. Is the entrance at the bottom of this giant lake? Ziyue did not know that he had been seen through by someone through a special array formation. He looked at the deep lake in front of him. The lake water rippled gently with the breeze. Although the bottom of the lake was slightly turbid, it was still very clear in his eyes. It was at least a few hundred meters deep. Then, with a thought, the surface of the water rippled slightly, and his body silently sank into the lake. A cave at the bottom of the lake? Ziyue did not release his divine sense. He knew that such an important place would definitely have an extremely sensitive divine sense detection array formation. Once the divine sense fluctuations were released, it would be awakened. In his heart, he did not want to make a big fuss and barge into the Tao Palace branch directly. After all, his opponent was a super force. It was hard to guarantee that there would be some hidden treasures that could pose a threat to him. Therefore, no matter how careful he was, he could not be too careful. Soon, Ziyue found the cave that Lu Yudao had mentioned before. This cave was enormous and deep. Vaguely, there was a strange venom that seeped in. Any creature that entered would be unwittingly infected by this flow of water. Ziyue compressed the gravity shadow domain and increased the repulsive force. Then, he approached the cave. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. The cave was enormous, and the walls seemed to have been reinforced by some special method. They were extremely tough, and there was not a single creature living in the water. As he advanced, Ziyue suddenly saw a bright light in front of him. Soon after, he saw a massive space that seemed to be propped up by some special force. Despite the pressure of the water, it could not penetrate the slightest bit. Inside this hole, there was an obvious array pattern. It was complex and mysterious, and there was even a faint spatial fluctuation coming from it. A teleportation array. That's the small teleportation array that Lu Yudao spoke of. It's the one that can truly enter the 9-star Tao Palace branch. Ziyue's heart thumped, but his gaze quickly fell outside the space. On the other side, a massive flood dragon that was more than 30 meters long and incomparably thick was coiled up. It seemed to have sensed Ziyue's arrival. At this moment, its bell-like eyes were wide open as they stared in Ziyue's direction. In the water, its perception was amplified by more than a few times. In addition, although Ziyue's gravity shadow domain was wondrous, in this environment, the pressure was also enormous. It could not help but emit faint fluctuations. Roar! The flood dragon immediately discovered Ziyue's tracks and was immediately enraged. With a flick of its tail, the flood dragon's body turned into a bolt of lightning as it shot out. Boom! Under the pressure of the terrifying force, a violent wave turned into an undercurrent that swept out as if it was extremely tyrannical. It was just a slight rush, but it was like a column of water crashing into each other. I've been discovered. As expected, even if my gravity shadow domain has been raised to the perfect level, it still cannot change the laws. In a special environment like the bottom of the water, it's extremely easy for the other party to sense it. Ziyue raised his eyes slightly, but he was not surprised. Great theurgy, even if it was a perfect level great theurgy that he had cultivated to the perfect level, relied on the laws of the world and the great Tao. Relying on the laws, even if it was incomparably compatible, it would be difficult to transcend the laws. It would inevitably be affected by the natural environment of the great Tao. Only Tao techniques, mysterious and unfathomable and peerlessly powerful, could transcend the laws and not be influenced by external factors. For example, Ziyue's gravity shadow domain, if it had reached the level of a Tao technique, he would be able to set its own laws. Perhaps it would be very simple and crude, and perhaps there would be some flaws, but it would be able to block the influence of water and fire and would not be easily discovered by the flood dragon. Chapter 692. Therefore, even though he had already activated his shadow gravity domain to the maximum and was extremely skilled in concealment, he was still discovered by the flood dragon. But so what? Ziyue thought to himself, but his eyes were as calm as ever. He stretched out his hand and stretched it out slightly. Bai Ziyue's sleeve immediately expanded endlessly. It was like a black cloth that spread out rapidly, covering the sky and covering the sun as it swept out. Chi. In the blink of an eye, the endless lake water and the flood dragon were sucked into his sleeve. At this moment, he had unleashed his perfected great mystique, heaven and earth sleeve. Roar! What is this? Let me out! The flood dragon roared and wantonly attacked and destroyed. Its divine consciousness fluctuated violently, and its voice was filled with panic. However, no matter how hard it tried, it was unable to cause any damage to the space inside the heaven and earth sleeve. It was as if it was isolated in this small world, and it was extremely difficult for it to move around. Now that my heaven and earth sleeve is at the perfect level, even if a titled emperor martial artist is sealed, he or she would not be able to escape. Not to mention this flood dragon, who is only at the middle stage of the Golden Core realm, and whose combat power is comparable to a late-stage Golden Core realm cultivator. Ziyue chuckled. He was not surprised by this outcome at all. He had perfected the heaven and earth sleeve. Putting everything else aside, the stability of the space inside the heaven and earth sleeve had reached an extremely high level. Perhaps it was not as stable as the space outside, but in reality, it was not much different. Not to mention this flood dragon. Even a king-ranked expert or a half-step primordial soul realm expert would need at least 10 breaths of time to break through. Then, Ziyue continued to compress the space inside the heaven and earth sleeve and unleashed the Great Forbidden Spirit technique to completely seal the flood dragon's spiritual aura. In the blink of an eye, the flood dragon was captured by him without any resistance. Senior, please spare my life. The flood dragon was terrified and hurriedly sent a telepathic message. He was too strong. It had never imagined that even with its flood dragon body and strength at the middle stage of the Golden Core stage, it would still be unable to retaliate in the hands of the person before it. Spare my life? It's not impossible. As Bai Ziyue spoke, he asked directly, then tell me, what exactly is that space? Where does the teleportation array lead to? The flood dragon's pupils constricted, and he didn't dare to speak. As expected, this flood dragon is a guardian beast left behind by the 9-star Tao Palace. Ziyue's eyes flickered with a hint of understanding. Without any hesitation, he reached out his claw and activated his divine sense. A special and cold aura with a hint of eeriness quickly drifted toward the dragon's head. Demonic Path Secret Technique, Soul Search. No, the Jiao dragon roared madly, and the Jiao dragon's pearl in its body trembled continuously. However, After being sealed by Ziyue, not only was he unable to use any of his strength, he couldn't even call for help. Not to mention blocking this soul-searching technique. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. However, when it reached the 5th breath, Ziyue's expression flickered and he immediately withdrew his hand. At this moment, there was a mournful sound of a horn. Then, the Jiao Dragon's aura completely dissipated and its soul was extinguished. It had completely perished. Spiritual energy plus 1, 5, 4, 6, 3, 6, 3, 2. I didn't expect that there would be a spiritual seal placed in the depths of the Jiao Dragon's soul. Once it touches those hidden places, the seal will be activated and its soul will be devoured and killed. Ziyue's expression turned slightly ugly. He had originally intended to use the Jiao Dragon to investigate some information about this Dao Palace branch. After all, he felt that relying entirely on Mount Qingxian was somewhat risky. In the end, when his soul-searching technique touched some hidden places, it immediately activated the Jiao Dragon's spiritual seal and killed it. But this time, it's not like I didn't gain anything. Ziyue softly sighed. From the Jiao Dragon's memories, he had managed to glean some information about this Dao Palace branch. He knew that this branch was a place where the 9-star Dao Palace cultivated disciples. Just like how the 9-star Dao Palace had tried to rope him in and gave him the status of a 10-star divine token. Every once in a while, a group of 10-star divine token cultivators would set foot in this place and use the resources here to grow and advance. This could be considered a place where the 9-star Dao Palace cultivated geniuses. If Taoist Lord Heaven Primordial had not acted against him back then, he would probably have been sent here to be cultivated. Of course, in addition to the 10-star divine token cultivators, this Dao Palace branch could not lack the genius disciples that the 9-star Dao Palace had searched for themselves. These genius disciples not only had outstanding talent, but also had the guidance of many experts of the 9-star Dao Palace. They had unimaginably rich cultivation resources, and in terms of growth potential, strength, and foundation, they were not the slightest bit inferior to the disciples of the super sections. From the Jiao Dragon's memories, Ziyue also learned that in this branch, there was a super genius that was highly valued. He was at the peak of the God Realm and had once fought with the Jiao Dragon, who was only at the early Golden Core Realm. Although he was no match for the Jiao Dragon, he had still managed to make the Jiao Dragon win with great difficulty. In Ziyue's view, this Jiao Dragon almost had the strength to kill an immortal and kill a Golden Core Realm expert. After all, the Jiao Dragon's bloodline was special. When it was in the early stage of the Golden Elixir Realm, it had the combat power of a middle-stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivator. That super genius was able to match it. If it was an ordinary early-stage Golden Elixir Realm cultivator, it would not be difficult to win or even kill him. Bai Ziyue paid a little attention to it, but he did not pay much attention to it and strode forward. He knew that because of the previous delay in the Jiao Dragon's movements, the other side of the teleportation array must have learned that he had intruded. They must have been prepared. Therefore, he did not hesitate. Thump, thump, thump. Ziyue directly passed through the space barrier and stepped into the space without any hindrance. He also saw that inside the space, there was a complicated and exquisite teleportation array that faintly emitted spatial fluctuations. It seemed to contain endless mysteries. Then, he fully unleashed his battle strength. He used the heaven patching technique, the God Spirit Dharma body, and with the help of his soul energy, he maintained his aura at the peak at all times to ensure that his battle strength had reached the peak. Only then did he take a deep breath, step forward, and stand on the teleportation array. On the teleportation array, there were already 99 upper-grade spirit stones, enough to provide for more than 10 cultivators for short-distance teleportation. Therefore, he only flicked his finger and shot out a ray of divine light. Buzz! Immediately, a ray of spiritual light rose from the teleportation array. Chapter 693. Buzz. The teleportation formation shook slightly. The center of the teleportation formation twisted and flashed. Ziyue, who was on top of the teleportation formation, disappeared without a trace. In the next moment, Ziyue felt a blur in front of his eyes. The world spun, and he appeared on a huge square. Furthermore, he immediately sensed the surging and powerful aura of the grand formation rising from the plaza. This teleportation formation was the guardian formation of the Dao Palace branch. It was both offensive and defensive, and it had an excellent trapping effect. Outside the teleportation formation, groups of cultivators were holding Dharma treasures and talismans. They were also preparing to attack. Their faces were solemn, and their eyes were filled with strong, murderous intent. It was obvious that the Dao Palace branch had been waiting for a long time. If Ziyue could not break the teleportation formation in time and escape, what awaited him would be endless attacks. He would be in a difficult situation, and his life would be in danger. "They're here! Quick, attack! Kill!" Cries of astonishment, groans, and a cold voice filled with murderous intent could be heard. Then, in the next moment, one attack after another turned into spiritual light that filled the sky. One after another, Dharma treasures emitted sharp and dazzling lights. There were also talismans that evolved the 5 elements killing arts with the power of the great Tao. At this moment, it was as if the sky was collapsing. It was so turbulent and magnificent. As expected, Ziyue's expression was very calm. Long before he was teleported in, he had already expected this. As such, he had already made a lot of preparations. Not only did he unleash all his combat strength, but he also maintained the heaven patching technique, the God spiritual body, the gravity shadow domain, the 5 emperor royal robe, and many other Taoist techniques. He had also been preparing to use the primordial magnetic divine light. 2 Taoist techniques and 3 great techniques were used at the same time. Even though Ziyue's pure purple elixir essence was countless times more powerful than cultivators of the same level, he still felt great pressure. If it weren't for the fact that he had the attribute panel, which allowed him to replenish his purple extreme elixir essence at any time and maintain his peak condition, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on for more than 2 or 3 breaths. However, it was also because of this that when Ziyue was teleported over and immediately sensed that the surrounding cultivators were attacking him, he also took action. The Tao art, the primordial magnetic god ray, turned into a brilliant ray that poured down from the 9 heavens like the Milky Way. It swiftly flew in the direction with the highest number of cultivators outside the formation. The void suddenly froze, and then it quickly collapsed and distorted. Wherever the divine light passed, it became dark and chaotic. Huff, huff, the divine light directly faced the numerous attacks. However, no matter what kind of attack it was all shattered the moment it collided with the divine light. Even the magical treasures couldn't withstand the divine light and were quickly shattered. The primordial magnetic divine light did not diminish in the slightest as it smashed into the formation that had risen and enveloped the surroundings. Boom, boom, boom. The formation was activated to the extreme by the surrounding cultivators, but it still couldn't withstand the attack of the divine light. After it became extremely dim, it shattered with a loud bang. Then, the divine light, which had been greatly depleted and had less than 10% of its power left, crushed down and blasted a group of cultivators. No, run! Dozens of cultivators immediately scattered in all directions in a panic. In the end, except for a few who were within the range of the divine light, the rest of the cultivators were quickly drowned by the divine light and died. Spiritual energy plus 574-2233 plus 712-3205 plus 761-2623. A large number of values of spiritual energy quickly flashed in front of Ziyue's eyes. Since most of them were in the divine realm, the increase in spiritual energy was not much. However, many little drops made an ocean, and it made his spiritual energy increase by a lot. No, impossible. Lu Changqing widened his eyes in shock and disbelief. Taoist priest North Ming? Was he really Taoist Dark North? Most importantly of all, had Taoist Dark North truly unleashed this attack with his own power? How is this possible? Wasn't he just in the Golden Core realm? Even if he was already a king, even if he really had a spiritual treasure, it was impossible for him to perform such a terrifying attack, right? The power of this attack. Even an ordinary late-stage, primordial soul realm cultivator would find it difficult to perform. Lu Changqing looked at the effect of this attack, and his face turned pale. One had to know that although this Dao Palace branch was hidden, the power of the protective formation that covered heaven and earth was definitely not weak. It was more advanced than the protective formations of many immortal cultivation sections. Even if 4 or 5 early-stage primordial soul realm cultivators joined forces, it would take them a long time to break it, let alone a golden core realm cultivator. In the end, it was just one attack. Bai Ziyue had only struck out a single blow to shatter the Grand Array. The remaining force of the attack had killed dozens of Holy Ji Palace disciples. Is he really only in the mid-stage golden core realm? Beside Lu Changqing, the super genius Zhou Xiao, who had always been valued by Lu Changqing, could not help but mutter to himself. He was the super genius Zhou Xiao that Ziyue had found out from the Flood Dragon's memory. Zhou Xiao had always been very proud and thought that he was invincible in his realm. Now that he had reached the mid-stage golden core realm, he no longer took the Flood Dragon outside seriously. His goal was always Dream Immortal King and Sword King Jiuju. He thought that he was just a little weak in his realm. When he reached the peak of the golden core realm like them, he would definitely not be weaker than them. He would also become a king, and his name would spread throughout the firmament territory. In the end, when he heard that Taoist Dark North's realm was lower than his, but his battle strength was shocking, and he could defeat 2 King Jiuju experts, he found it hard to believe. He thought that there must be something fishy about it, and that it was exaggerated by outsiders. In the end, when he truly saw his opponent and sensed the terrifying might of his opponent's attack, he was immediately terrified. He felt extremely shocked. Especially at this moment, he clearly felt Ziyue's immortal cultivation realm. Middle stage golden core realm. His realm was the same as his. But his battle strength was thousands of times stronger than his. Whether it is true or not, those disciples alone can't stop him. Inform everyone to quickly fight. In addition, quickly activate the super long-distance Dharma formation to ask for help. Tell them that we have encountered a shocking enemy, Taoist Dark North, and ask the headquarters to send someone to help us through the teleportation formation. Lu Changqing said. He didn't dare to hesitate at all and quickly rushed forward. Before he could get close, his attack had already landed. Yes, Zhou Xiao knew the severity of the matter. When he felt that Ziyue's battle strength was far beyond their expectations, he understood. This time, they might not be able to stop him. Asking for help was the best choice. Chapter 694. Kill. Ziyue did not hesitate to attack again after destroying the Taoist Palace's mountain guarding formation. Lightning flashed on his body, and he rushed into the group of cultivators at an extremely fast speed. Then, a black light flashed on Ziyue's body. The gravitational shadow domain that originally enveloped him spread out. In an instant, the air within 1,000 feet of him suddenly became thick. Gravity that was 500 times stronger suddenly came crashing down. Rumble! In an instant, dozens of cultivators who were within the range of Ziyue's domain, except for 1 or 2 golden core cultivators who could barely withstand it and did not die immediately, the rest of the cultivators, regardless of whether they were at the early stage of the divine realm, the peak of the divine realm, or even the half-step golden core cultivators, had their internal organs crushed in an instant. Their bones and flesh could not withstand the pressure of the gravity and shattered into pieces, turning into a pile of meat paste. They were dead. This was the effect of the gravitational shadow domain that Bai Ziyue had upgraded to the perfect level and cultivated to the perfect level. In addition to the extremely powerful concealment power, the strength of the gravity had also been raised to the extreme. Within 1,000 feet, the gravity could reach 500 times. Outside 1,000 feet, although it would be greatly weakened, it was still not something that ordinary cultivators could withstand. No one below the golden core realm could survive under the pressure of 500 times the gravity. Above the Golden Core realm, if one was at the early or middle stage of the Golden Core realm, even if they did not die directly, they would instantly lose their combat power and lie on the ground, unable to move an inch, let alone counterattack. In other words, Ziyue could be invincible in the same realm just by relying on the gravitational shadow domain. As for the remaining two Golden Core cultivators, with a flash of Ziyue's flying sword, their heads were quickly pierced through. Domain? Gravitational shadow domain? How can it be so strong? Lu Changqing, who had just arrived, was shocked. The strength of this domain is much stronger than mine. It's almost comparable to that of a middle-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. It did not reverse the laws, so it's obvious that this domain has not reached the level of a Dao technique. But this strength, could it be that this domain has been raised to perfection by Dark North King? How old is he? Which one of the great divine abilities didn't require hundreds or thousands of years of accumulation from entry level to perfection? It was obvious that Dark North King had just broken through to the Golden Core realm. His cultivation time was limited. No matter how talented he was, there should be a limit, right? Not to mention the numerous great divine abilities in his possession. Based on their might, which one of them wasn't at the advanced stage or above? Also, wasn't his strength a little too strong? Could it be that he really did kill Old Devil Chalice and fellow Taoist Ascendant Cloud? Lu Changqing felt a chill in his heart. At this moment, he really wanted to escape regardless of everything. In fact, Bai Ziyue's strength had exceeded his expectations. His previous confidence, complacency, and eagerness to make a move had all been shattered by Ziyue's terrifying attack. But when he thought of the consequences of fleeing and the punishment he would receive from the 9-star Dao Palace, he clenched his teeth. He activated his secret technique and unleashed his full combat prowess. Then, a magic treasure that looked like a pair of scissors turned into a stream of light and rushed out. The distress signal has been sent. Stop him. As long as we can hold him off for a while, reinforcements will arrive. After Lu Changqing made his move, he didn't dare to stop and attacked again. Whoosh! A dazzling bolt of lightning suddenly filled the sky and blasted towards Ziyue. As expected of a veteran early-stage, primordial spirit realm cultivator. His strength is even stronger than that of Ascendant Cloud. He should be at the first-tier, early-stage, primordial spirit realm like me. Bai Ziyue's expression changed, and he became more solemn. A first-tier, early-stage, primordial spirit realm cultivator was definitely not weak. Even he had to be careful when dealing with him. Rumble. Thunder roared. It turned into a waterfall and fell. At the same time, the scissors suddenly opened up and a misty power spread out from within. In the middle of the scissors, there was a terrifying force that made one's mind uneasy. Ziyue didn't dare to be careless. Lightning flashed on his body, and he turned into a stream of spiritual light to dodge quickly. However, the power of the thunder and lightning was too fast. Even though his lightning escape light was equally fast, he couldn't help but be affected. At least 70% of the power blasted onto Ziyue's body. The 5 Emperor God Imperial Robe on his body swayed. However, Bai Ziyue's 5 Emperor Divine Royal Robe had also been upgraded to the level of a perfect Great Abijna. Under the enhancement of the Heaven Patching Technique and other techniques, its defensive power had naturally reached the first tier of the early primordial soul realm. It was easy to completely block the thunder and lightning attack, let alone 70% of its power. However, the Scissors Dharma treasure emitted a misty power and rushed over. Although its speed was slightly slower than the thunder and lightning, it was equally shocking. In response, Ziyue reached out with one hand. The cuff of his sleeve instantly expanded and absorbed the Scissors Dharma treasure. Ka. In the universe in the sleeve, the scissors kept opening and closing. Every time it closed, a special power would be released, causing Ziyue to tremble. Boom! Finally, the scissors broke free from the restraints of the universe in the sleeve and reappeared in the outside world. However, at this point, Ziyue naturally wouldn't stop. As he used his lightning escape light to close in on Lu Chongqing, a magnetic slash silently rushed out. At the same time, his natal flying sword evolved to break all techniques with a single sword and quickly rushed out. Lu Chongqing was secretly shocked. His speed was equally shocking, and he wasn't any slower than Ziyue. He quickly dodged. Ancestor Evergreen is here. He's blocking Daoist Dark North. Quick, let's attack together. The two powerhouses quickly exchanged blows, causing a huge commotion. Immediately, there were cultivators who cried out in surprise. Lu Chongqing's arrival immediately made the defeated disciples overjoyed. It was as if they had found a backbone. Under the command of a few Golden Core cultivators, they all joined forces and attacked Ziyue. However, because the effect of Ziyue's gravity shadow domain was too terrifying, everyone was stunned. Therefore, even if they attacked, they all hid 100 feet away. Do you think you can escape by hiding? Ziyue sneered, and lightning flashed on his body. His speed instantly exploded to the extreme. Like a flash, the cultivators didn't even have time to attack before they were crushed by the sudden gravity and turned into meat paste. Even if there were some who were crushed by the gravity and were lucky enough to survive, they would be killed one by Ziyue's Dark North flying sword. In the blink of an eye, there were casualties. Your opponent is me. Lu Chongqing was shocked and hurriedly attacked again. The scissors were like lightning, opening and closing quickly. Immediately, a dazzling light rushed out and slashed towards Ziyue. Chapter 695. Humph. Ziyue was not afraid. He used a magnetic slash to meet the attack silently. He opened and closed his hands, and the purple core energy in his body circulated rapidly. Chi! 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 Beams of sword light suddenly shot up into the sky, turning into sword pillars that fell rapidly. At the same time, a huge shadow appeared above Ziyue's head, and he shouted 3 times in a row. In the blink of an eye, 3 blurry green lights shot towards Lu Chongqing at an extremely fast speed. As the number of battles increased, Ziyue was able to use his various skills at an extremely fast speed. He could use them in the blink of an eye. His speed was astonishing. Just as Lu Chongqing was about to make his move, he was suddenly attacked by Ziyue's 3 innate divine abilities. Even though his primordial spirit was much more stable than the Rising Cloud Patriarchs, his soul spirit defense was still shattered when the 3 innate divine abilities, absent-minded, landed. His mind was shaken, and his spiritual world almost collapsed. Then the magnetic slash flashed and cut the scissors. Bang! The scissors were an inferior primordial spirit treasure and were extremely powerful. However, the might of the great Yuan magnetic slash that Ziyue used was definitely not weak. Although he was unable to completely send the scissors flying, he still caused them to fly backwards without any effect. Then, boom, 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 the 5 Emperors' sky-sealing sword fell and turned into a huge sword-shaped shadow, directly sealing Lu Chongqing within it. Oh no! Lu Chongqing's primordial spirit was really stable. After the initial chaos, he quickly recovered. He stretched out his hand, and thunderbolts condensed in the void. They quickly turned into beams of lightning and fell with a loud bang, hitting the sword wall. Chila! 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 The incomparably stable sword wall immediately became shaky, and the spiritual light dimmed to the extreme in an instant. It's really difficult to deal with. Ziyue's expression didn't change. Instead, a spirit light shot out and landed on Lu Chongqing's body. His opponent's speed was indeed very fast, but within the range of the 5 Emperors' heaven-sealing sword. No matter how he dodged, he could not escape Ziyue's great forbidden spirit technique. As the spiritual light fell, the spiritual light on Lu Chongqing's body immediately dissipated. The power of the primordial spirit in his body was firmly locked in his primordial spirit, unable to move at all. Immediately, the 30 kilometers long bolt of lightning swiftly dispersed because it was no longer maintained by his control and the energy of his soul. The sword wall, which was on the verge of collapse, quickly stabilized. Then, Ziyue attacked again. The void froze for a moment before distorting and collapsing. Then, a dazzling divine light shot out like a waterfall. No. Lu Chanqing, who had just broken free from the seal of the great forbidden spirit technique, had an unprecedented fear in his eyes. But in the next moment, the divine light rushed over. It was as if the might of the heavens had descended and quickly crushed his body. Boom! Blood spurted out, and his primordial spirit collapsed. A large number of treasures scattered in all directions because of the destruction of his storage pouch. Then, they were quickly crushed into powder by the divine light. In the void, a wave of distorted essence immediately rose. That was the essence emitted by countless spirit stones and treasures after they had been destroyed to the extreme. But it quickly dissipated with the wind. At this time, the person in charge of this branch of the Holy Ji Palace, Lu Chanqing, who was at the peak of the early primordial spirit realm, and whose strength reached the first tier of the early primordial spirit realm, had completely died at the hands of Bai Ziyue. Even at the moment of his death, his eyes were still filled with disbelief and despair. It was as if he had never expected Ziyue to be so powerful. He was so powerful that he could kill a primordial spirit realm cultivator and flatten a branch of the Dao Palace. What? Ancestor Chanqing is dead. He died at the hands of the North Nether King? The remaining disciples of the Dao Palace instantly turned pale. The shock in their hearts squeezed and squeezed them until their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. All of them were terrified to the extreme. Ancestor Chanqing's strength must be extremely powerful. He could be considered a powerhouse even at the early stage primordial spirit realm. But even so, he was still no match for Taoist North Nether and was killed. From this, it can be seen how terrifying his strength was. Was he at the mid-stage primordial spirit realm? Or is he even stronger? Compared to him, the self-proclaimed genius who was confident that he was not weaker than anyone at the same level. How insignificant was he? Arrogant? Zhou Xiao, who had just used the super long-distance assistance array to call for help from the Dao Palace headquarters, turned pale with fright. He made a prompt decision and quickly began to flee. He knew that with Ziyue's strength, no one at the Golden Core realm would be able to suppress him. Only primordial spirit realm cultivators. And it had to be at the late stage of the primordial spirit realm. He had to report this information to the headquarters as soon as possible. Otherwise, the 9-star Dao Palace that he was in would definitely suffer great losses. Moreover, it was very likely that he would die here. Run! Run! At this time, the others were also alerted. Like swallows, they fled in all directions. However, no matter how fast they were, how could they be faster than Ziyue's lightning-like escape light? The power of the pure purple elixir essence surged. Immediately, dazzling streaks of lightning shot out from his body. Then, like a cannonball that tore through the void, he was like a roaring gale that swept through the void. With just a flash, he crushed the void, leaving behind a long streak of lightning that stirred up the heavens and earth. And his speed was pushed to the extreme by the lightning. No matter who it was, no one could escape from his pursuit light. In just a few moments, he had caught up to the disciples and killed them one by one. Are they all dead? No, there's still one more. Ziyue sensed the battlefield and spread his consciousness. However, this was a branch of the Dao Palace after all, under the power of the array. Many places had the effect of blocking out consciousness. However, Ziyue clearly remembered that there had been a mid-Oris core realm cultivator by Lu Chanqing's side. Although that cultivator's face was ordinary, his arrogance and the reverence in the eyes of the surrounding cultivators left a deep impression on him. Not to mention, when he had used the soul-searching technique on the Flood Dragon, he had also seen the image of this cultivator. It was the super genius of this branch of the Dao Palace, Zhou Xiao. His figure moved, and he hurriedly turned into a streak of light, beginning to investigate the entire branch. None of the barriers or spirit designs could withstand a casual blow from him. They were all shattered by him. Then, With a sweep of his consciousness, he investigated each area clearly. Treasury, Hall of Heritage, Hall of Martial Arts, Hall of Communication, Ziyue searched everywhere. Suddenly, his gaze shifted to a large hall. The teleportation hall. He hurriedly stretched out his hand, and a magnetic slash swept out. Immediately after, his intrinsic flying sword evolved into a sword to break all techniques and quickly stabbed out. No, Zhou Xiao had just killed a disciple who was about to be teleported away. He hurriedly stepped onto the teleportation array and activated it with all his might. A look of despair flashed across his face. Chapter 696. Any teleportation formation, even if it had sufficient energy, needed time to activate. This time was not long, only 3 breaths of time. But at this moment, 3 breaths of time seemed like an eternity to him. Boom! The great primordial magnet slashed through everything, quickly shattering the protective formation above the teleportation hall. The entire hall was cut in half, revealing Zhou Xiao, who was activating the teleportation formation with all his might and preparing to escape. From afar, Ziyue could see the madness on his face and the despair in his eyes. Then, the flying sword flashed and sliced through the air. Poof! No matter how he tried to block or how he tried, he could not stop Ziyue's sword. It pierced through his defenses and landed on his head, piercing it completely. Then, because the teleportation formation was not continuously activated, its energy was not enough to pierce through the void and reach the other side. It gradually dimmed and quieted down. I wonder what the situation inside is like. Outside Mirror Lake, Su Zhong looked at his senior brother with a nervous expression. This time, he was too impulsive. No one could have imagined that Taoist Dark North would be so crazy. He decided to go to the Mirror Lake branch of a 9-star Dao Palace alone and fight the many experts there, especially one of them, Liu Chanxing, who was at the initial stage of the Primordial Soul Realm. Before Liu Chanxing broke through to the Primordial Soul Realm 1,000 years ago, he had a record of fighting against Emperor-level experts without losing. After breaking through to the Primordial Soul Realm, even if he did not have the combat strength of an early-stage Primordial Soul Realm expert like Emperor-level experts, he was definitely not weak. After 1,000 years, he is probably not far from the middle stage of the Primordial Soul Realm. Coupled with the support of the formation here, even a middle-stage Primordial Soul Realm cultivator would find it difficult to escape unscathed. Although Senior Dark North has a record of killing Primordial Soul Realm cultivators, the outcome this time is still very unpredictable. Liu Yudao shook his head. He put away the frivolous look on his face and said seriously, which was a rare sight, "No matter what, we have alerted the enemy this time." Su Zhong sighed. It would not be easy for Azure Mystic Mountain to find such a secret branch of the 9-star Dao Palace. If they failed this time, the 9-star Dao Palace would assuredly move this secret ground away. Even if they didn't move, they would set up even stronger defenses or even traps to guard against powerful enemies. There's no need to worry about that. Since I've already made my move, I naturally won't let the 9-star Dao Palace's Mirror Lake branch get by peacefully. Before Taoist Dark North entered, I notified Uncle Master Su Xian. Given Uncle Master's speed, it shouldn't take long for him to arrive here. He could only hope that Taoist Dark North would be able to hold on for a bit longer. Don't die prematurely in the Mirror Lake branch, Liu Yudao said with a solemn expression. Should we make a move in advance? Su Zhong's heart trembled. Not necessarily. The 9-star Dao Palace was not to be trifled with. However, they had been so aggressive in the true law domain, causing many of their senior and junior brothers to suffer heavy casualties. They had no choice but to hide in the dark. They had to be warned. Let them know that our Qingxian Mountain is not to be trifled with. As Liu Yudao spoke, his eyes suddenly lit up as he looked into the distance, revealing a look of pleasant surprise. Eldest martial uncle is here. It's over. Although I don't know if anyone managed to escape, it went very smoothly this time. Ziyue looked at the teleportation formation. With a flash of his sword, he sliced open a corner of it. Instantly, the teleportation formation was destroyed by him. He also took advantage of the situation to prevent other experts from arriving through the teleportation formation. As for whether or not someone had really left through the teleportation formation, he didn't really care. This was because he knew that the Mirror Lake branch would definitely have a communication formation with the outside world. The news of his surprise attack could not be hidden from the 9-star Dao Palace. It made no difference whether they knew or not. However, through this battle, I've confirmed my strength. I should be at the peak of the early primordial spirit realm, which is the first tier of the early primordial spirit realm. Ziyue thought of the 3 primordial spirit realm cultivators who had died at his hands. They were all at the early primordial spirit realm. However, there was a very clear division in their strength. Among them, Patriarch Bitter Chalice was the weakest, followed by the Rising Cloud Patriarch. The strongest was naturally Lu Changqing, who had died at his hands this time. It almost corresponded to his own division of the early primordial spirit realm, which was the 3rd tier, the 2nd tier, and the 1st tier of the early primordial spirit realm. The reason why Bai Ziyue was able to kill the Rising Cloud Great Ancestor was not because he was already above the 1st class of the early stage of the primordial spirit realm. It was just that he had a shocking combat strength that could surpass the level of his strength. It was a perfected Dao technique, the primordial magnetic divine light. With the help of this Dao technique, he could naturally unleash an offensive effect that far exceeded his original strength. Next, Ziyue swept his gaze across the many halls and suddenly waved his hand. Rumble! The void trembled, and a huge spatial hole immediately appeared in front of him. Following it, one cultivator after another rushed out of the cave and landed on the place. They were the cultivators that Ziyue had recruited in the cloud-piercing mountain range when he founded the Dark North sect. Leading them was the former city lord of Cloud-Piercing City and the current vice-sect leader of the Dark North sect, True Lord Bai. In addition to True Lord Bai, True Lord Zhuge, True Lord Su, True Lord Xiuyue Piao, and the others were also present. It could be said that Ziyue had recruited most of the cultivators above the aperture opening realm in the Dark North Grotto Heaven. Sect Leader. Greetings, Sect Leader. After the initial panic, everyone quickly calmed down and looked at Ziyue with respect and admiration. Some of the smarter ones scanned their surroundings, and their pupils quickly shrank. Where is this? The scale of the buildings, the environment, and the spirit chi environment were superior to that of many immortal cultivation sections. Wait a minute. Dao Palace? A branch of the Dao Palace? Could this be the legendary core secret place of the 9-star Dao Palace? A branch of the Dao Palace? Looking at the traces of the battle around them and the fallen cultivators on the ground, could it be? The faces of the group of disciples were filled with shock. Could the sect leader really have come here alone to flatten a secret branch of the 9-star Dao Palace? How could this be? The 9-star Dao Palace was one of the top superpowers in the world and ranked among the top 3 in the entire astral boundary. Even a branch would have at least one primordial spirit expert overseeing it. But it had been flattened? In particular, True Lord Bai and the others who had some understanding of this were extremely shocked. Could their sect leader already have the strength to contend with or even kill a primordial spirit expert? Chapter 697. Ziyue naturally wouldn't explain anything. He simply instructed, "Go and collect the spoils of war." This was one of the reasons why he had summoned so many disciples from the Grotto Heaven. The Mirror Lake Dao Palace was extremely large. If he was alone, he would naturally overlook some things and spend a lot of time. After all, this was a branch of the 9-star Dao Palace. The longer he stayed, the more dangerous it would be. Moreover, many of the treasures were nothing to him at his level of strength, but to the other disciples, they were extremely valuable. He believed that his North Nether Sect's disciples would definitely loot this branch of the North Nether Sect completely. Yes, Sect Master. The group of disciples couldn't wait any longer. When they heard the order, They respectfully bowed and immediately rushed to the various halls. The treasure hall, the inheritance hall, the communication hall. No matter where they were, the disciples of Dark North sect could be seen everywhere. Regardless of the treasures, even the pillars, carvings, and jade flooring of the Great Hall, anything that was valuable in the eyes of cultivators was taken away by them one by one. They would either throw them into storage bags or take them apart and pile them together. There were even cultivators heading toward the spirit vein below the main hall. The spirit vein wasn't of a low grade. Although it wasn't grade 5, it was at least an advanced grade 4 spirit vein. It was much more superior than the beginner grade 4 spirit vein in the Dark North Grotto Heaven. Once the core of the spirit vein was collected, the spirit vein in the Grotto Heaven would definitely be upgraded. This was what made the cultivators the most excited. Of course, the spirit stones in the spirit vein also made the eyes of countless disciples shine. Sect Master, True Lord Bai came forward to greet him, excitement mixed with obvious nervousness. He asked in a low voice, "This seems to be a branch of the 9-star Dao Palace. How did you come to be with the 9-star Dao Palace?" Ziyue was about to reply when his gaze suddenly turned to the square where he had originally appeared. In that square, there was also a teleportation array. That teleportation array was connected to the Mirror Lake Dao Palace branch. At this moment, the teleportation array suddenly lit up, startling Ziyue. Then he saw Lu Yu Dao, Su Zhong, and an unfamiliar middle-aged Daoist appear in the teleportation array. This, Lu Yu Dao and the others, who had been on high alert and ready to make a move at any time, were shocked when they saw the scene before them. Then, they saw Ziyue standing not too far away, looking at them warily. To be more precise, he was looking at eldest Uncle Su Xian, who was standing in the middle of them. They immediately relaxed. Then, he was incomparably shocked. The 9-star Dao Palace's Mirror Lake branch was flattened just like that. Even Lu Changqing, who is at the peak of the early primordial spirit realm, is dead. They were all killed by Daoist Dark North by himself. As for the group of North Nether sect disciples, they could tell at a glance that most of them were only at the God realm or even the Aperture Awakening realm. There were very few Golden Core realm cultivators, so it was impossible for them to play a big role in such an intense battlefield. Not to mention, how astonishing were their perception and vision. Naturally, they could also tell that among this group of cultivators, even the strongest, True Lord Bai, did not show any signs of spiritual qi being scattered after a fierce battle. Clearly, he had not participated in the previous battle. You are the Daoist Dark North, the Daoist Dark North who is widely rumored to have defeated 2 titled kings and caused one of the 9 Extinction Sword King and the other Dream Immortal King to flee. You are indeed extraordinary. This time, you destroyed the Mirror Lake branch of the 9-star Dao Palace with your own strength. When I heard the message from the Daoist, I was a little angry and thought that he was fooling around. Now, it seems that I was overthinking things. You are indeed very good. Daoist Su Xian looked at Ziyue with a face full of praise, his eyes full of admiration. Who is he? Ziyue looked at Lu Yu Dao, a trace of vigilance in his eyes. Pressure. Ziyue felt a strong sense of threat and pressure from this middle-aged Daoist. This was because this middle-aged Daoist was at the primordial spirit realm. Moreover, his strength had reached the mid-stage of the primordial spirit realm. Therefore, even though Ziyue had just experienced a great battle and was extremely confident in his own strength, he did not dare to relax in the slightest. The purple core essence in his body vibrated slightly, causing the Dark North flying sword in his body to vibrate as well, as if it was ready to strike at any time. Senior Dark North, don't misunderstand. This is an elder of Mount Qingxian and also our eldest senior uncle, Daoist Su Xian. I was worried that you would be in danger this time, so I took the initiative to invite eldest senior uncle here. Now, it seems that my actions were superfluous. However, senior strength is indeed worthy of our admiration. We thought that going against the odds to slay immortals only existed in legends, but we did not expect you to succeed. According to my eldest senior uncle, Lu Changqing's strength is definitely not weak. He is considered an expert in the early-stage primordial spirit realm. Coupled with the great formation here, even my eldest senior uncle had to put in some effort. Who would have thought that he would still be unable to escape your attack? Seeing this, Lu Yudao hurriedly stepped forward and explained. Is that so? Zhua nodded slightly and retracted his aura. However, in his heart, he naturally did not believe all of his nonsense. The sect master is respectfully called the Dark North Lord. Furthermore, he fought against 2 kings and killed the Jiuju Sword King and the Dream Immortal King. He even killed in primordial spirit realm true cultivator. Even a mid-stage primordial spirit realm expert praised him. Perfected Lord Bai, who had been standing respectfully at the side, could not help but widen his eyes when he heard this. He was almost dizzy from the impact of their conversation. The news that they revealed in just a few sentences was simply too shocking. This was simply too shocking. If someone else had said this, he would not have paid any attention or believed it at all. However, the person who said this was a true cultivator who had reached the mid-stage primordial spirit realm. So he had no choice but to believe it. There was no room for doubt. Even so, he still found it hard to believe. After all, as far as he knew, the sect master had just broken through to the Golden Core realm. Previously, when he heard that the sect master had broken through to the mid-stage Golden Core realm, he was already shocked. When he heard about the sect master's battle achievements, he was really speechless. Jiuju Sword King? The Dream Immortal King? That was a peerless Golden Core realm expert, but they were no match for the sect master. Furthermore, the sect master was respectfully called the Dark North Lord. What had happened in the outside world in just a few short months? Furthermore, he had killed in primordial spirit realm true cultivator. Was this also true? However, no matter how unbelievable it was, he knew that a secret place like the 9-star Dao Palace branch would definitely have a primordial spirit realm expert guarding it. Now that this place had been destroyed, who else could it be but the sect master? Chapter 698. Daoist Biming. Although I know that you do not want to be tied down, I still think that joining Mount Qingxian is a good choice. It will also allow you to improve your cultivation level even more rapidly. For example, you are only at the mid-Oris elixir realm. Although you are not weak, the difference in cultivation level is not so easy to make up for. Once you are hunted down by the mid-Oris essence soul stage cultivators of the 9-star Dao Palace, you will be in great danger. But if you join Mount Qingxian, things will be different. On Mount Qingxian, there's a rare treasure called the geocentric marrow liquid that can quickly improve your cultivation level and cultivation level. Just 1 drop can save you 10 days to half a month of cultivation. As long as there is enough geocentric marrow liquid, it will not be a problem for you to reach the late Oris elixir realm in 3 months and the pinnacle of the Oris elixir realm in a year. If you're willing, I can guarantee that you can freely use the geocentric marrow liquid and reach the pinnacle of the Oris elixir realm. In addition, you can choose any of the best techniques in the world, such as the Qing Xian True Classic, 9 Lives Mystic Immortal Record, 10,000 Transformation Scripture, and others that can reach the pinnacle of the primordial spirit realm. Dao technique inheritance will not be a problem. Ziyue's performance in this battle seemed to have completely moved Daoist Xushuan, and he quickly extended his invitation. He knew that Ziyue had rejected the offers of Lu Yudao and the others. But with his status, the benefits and promises that he could offer were naturally more important, and he was full of confidence. Geocentric marrow liquid, and it is freely available? The Qing Xian True Canon, the 9 Lives Mysterious Immortal Records, and the Wanhua True Canon. These 3 legacies can be chosen freely. Lu Yudao and Su Zhong, who were standing at the side, were so envious that their eyes turned red. The value of the geocentric marrow liquid was needless to say. It was a rare treasure that could directly save a cultivator hundreds or thousands of years of cultivation. Even Mount Qingxian did not have many reserves of it. Usually, only cultivators with great contributions or super geniuses with great potential were qualified to exchange for it. As for techniques, such as the Qing Xian True Classic, they were even more precious. A cultivation technique that allowed one to reach the pinnacle of the primordial soul realm not only included the cultivation method, but also the accompanying Tao technique inheritance, especially the Qing Xian True Canon. It had a special meaning to Mount Qing Xian. The future master of Mount Qing Xian would definitely be someone who had cultivated the Qing Xian True Canon. It could be said that once Yue joined Mount Qing Xian and chose to cultivate the Qing Xian True Canon, it meant that he had the potential to lead the entire Mount Qing Xian and become a mountain lord of Mount Qing Xian. However, when they thought of Ziyue's battle record and his ability to defeat immortals, they immediately felt that it was reasonable. It was very normal for such a super genius, an existence that was invincible among his peers, to receive such treatment. No superpower would dare to underestimate such a person. Thank you, Elder Su Xian. Ziyue first bowed, and then faintly refused. It's just that I've already made up my mind. I don't want to join any forces in the short term, so I can only choose to disappoint Senior's good intentions. Moreover, I feel that the way we are working together now is more appropriate. I need your channels in exchange for information, secret techniques, and treasures, and you want to use me to deal with the 9 stars of the Tao Palace and eliminate dissidents. We're just taking what we need. Also, although fellow Taoist Yudeo's actions this time were done with good intentions, which cultivator of our generation hasn't been cautious and constantly on guard against schemes and schemes? Therefore, if you're still willing to work together next time, I hope that you won't meet each other face to face. Otherwise, on the battlefield, it's difficult to distinguish friend from foe, and there may be accidental injuries. If someone is injured, or if some of you die because of this, it won't look good on both sides. As he spoke, Ziyue's tone carried a hint of warning, and he actually sounded a little aggressive. This, Dark North, Liu Yudao, and Su Zhong's expressions changed, and they were somewhat in disbelief. How dare he? How dare he speak to them like this, especially when there was Taoist Su Xian, who had reached the mid-stage of the primordial soul realm. Where did this Taoist Dark North's confidence come from? Even the vice-sect master of the Dark North sect, perfected Lord Bai, felt his heart skip a beat, and he became extremely nervous. Mount Qing Xian? The other party was from Mount Qing Xian. As a veteran golden elixir realm cultivator, he naturally had a certain understanding of this force. Although there were few rumors in the outside world due to the suppression of the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, it was still one of the top 10 super forces, and there were countless primordial soul realm cultivators. The sect master's words were indeed a little impolite. He was afraid that the other party would be angered and attack them. One must know that the other party had a mid-stage primordial soul realm cultivator present, and it was enough to crush them. On the other hand, Ziyue looked indifferent. He naturally had confidence in his heart. The great battle had caused the number of his spiritual energy to soar again. It had now reached more than 650 million spiritual energy points. 600 million spiritual energy points were enough to raise his strength to the late stage of the golden elixir realm, and his combat strength to the mid-stage of the primordial soul realm. If he really wanted to fight, he would not have the slightest fear. It's fine. Taoist Su Xian waved his hand and said with a smile, Taoist Bei Ming's words make a lot of sense. Now that our cooperation has just begun, it is normal for us to be wary of each other. How about this? I have a Mount Qing Xian token here, and it is a communication item between Mount Qing Xian and the upper echelons of some sections. Some information transmission and even small items transmission can be done with the help of this Mount Qing Xian token. Other than when the treasure is being transmitted, this Mount Qing Xian token will automatically determine your location. At other times, it will not have any reaction. Of course, if you feel that it is not careful, you can also place it in your Heavenly Abode magic treasure. The Heavenly Abode magic treasure can isolate space, and naturally, it can isolate its location. Saying this, he flipped his hand and handed over a green badge that seemed to be only an inch long to Qin Nan. Thank you, Elder Su Xian. Ziyue's eyes moved, and he thanked him before taking it from behind. When he touched it, it was heavy. He immediately sensed that this token was not simple. It was a small piece, but it contained a lot of materials and went through a lot of refining methods. It seemed heavy and very delicate. This Mount Qingxian token is just a small way of transmitting information. It contains the magic of transmitting items, and that is the most precious part. Even if we are thousands of miles away, we can use this Mount Qingxian token to transmit what you need. In the entire astral realm, only the Mount Qingxian tokens of Mount Qingxian have such magic. It is unique. Su Zhong hurriedly explained when he saw this. Chapter 699. We don't have many of these tokens in the entire Mount Qingxian. There are less than 100 of them, and many of them have been lost without a trace. The effort and price required to refine each token is no less than that of a supreme Aura's core treasure. It is extremely precious. Only someone like our eldest Uncle Su Xian, who is at the primordial soul realm and above, is qualified to give out the Mount Qingxian token, and each person only has one chance. For senior to receive this Qingxian Mountain token from eldest martial uncle, it can be seen how much eldest martial uncle values you. Lu Yudao followed suit and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Elder Su Xian." Ziyue glanced at Taoist Su Xian with a look of gratitude. As he said, "We each took what we needed. I only hope that you will be careful in the future. I don't want the Mount Qingxian token I gave out to go missing or fall into the hands of enemy cultivators." Taoist Su Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry." Ziyue cupped his hands. "If that's the case, we'll meet again." Taoist Su Xian nodded. Then, as if he had thought of something, he looked around at the numerous Dark North sect disciples who were rapidly dismantling the hall. His face twitched for a moment before he said, "This place is after all one of the secret grounds of the 9-star Dao Palace. Now that it has been destroyed, the 9-star Dao Palace will definitely send experts to investigate. Even if the teleportation formation here has been destroyed, I estimate that it will take at most an hour for someone to arrive. Based on my understanding of the 9-star Dao Palace, even if it is not the late primordial soul realm Taoist Bitterzen, it will definitely be the mid-primordial soul realm Taoist Wang Shuiji, who has the battle record of defeating 3 true cultivators of the same level. Therefore, I advise you to leave as soon as possible. The late primordial soul realm Taoist Bitterzen and the mid-primordial soul realm Taoist Wang Shuiji." Ziyue's heart trembled as he nodded. "Thank you for your reminder, Elder. I will be careful." After Taoist Su Xian and the others left, Ziyue did not dare to hesitate. He immediately helped the disciples move the treasures into his northern underworld paradise. The destructive power of celestial method cultivators was already astonishing. Now that the entire North Nether sect had been mobilized, and there was no lack of gods and golden core realm experts among them, the efficiency of this operation was naturally very remarkable. In just half an hour, all the treasures and materials in the Mirror Lake secret realm had been emptied. Even the high-grade 4 spiritual vein in the secret realm was being emptied out. Not only had the core of the spirit vein been taken away, but the many main and branch spirit veins within the spirit vein, as well as the vast amount of spirit stones stored within them, had also been emptied. In this way, even if the spiritual vein did not completely wither away and become a dead vein, its grade would inevitably drop drastically. It was already very difficult to maintain a grade 2 spiritual vein. Sect Master, True Monarch Bai, and the others quickly looked at Ziyue. "Everyone, enter the Grotto Heaven. We'll talk about the inventory later." Bai Ziyue did not hesitate and immediately opened the northern underworld Grotto Heaven. Immediately, the North Nether sect cultivators turned into streaks of flowing light and rushed into the Grotto Heaven. At the same time, a large number of treasures, materials, building materials, and a sea of rare treasures were all collected into the northern underworld Grotto Heaven like a rain of spirits. After all the disciples and treasures had been collected, Ziyue once again looked at the devastated Mirror Lake secret realm. Then he turned around, randomly chose a place, and turned into a streak of flowing light and rushed over. The headquarters of the 9-star Tao Palace, where the real Tao Palace was located. It was a huge spiritual mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall and stretched for thousands of miles around it. It was incomparably majestic. Inside, huge peaks stood in great numbers, and the spiritual chi was unbelievably abundant. Among the countless huge peaks, there was a huge peak. It was not the highest peak, and it even seemed a little short. However, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth here was the densest on that huge spiritual mountain. It was so dense that it seemed like it would turn into immortal chi, causing all living things to grow and flourish here. Rare flowers and herbs could be seen everywhere. Second, third, and fourth grade spiritual materials could be seen almost everywhere. Even fifth grade spiritual materials were not considered rare here. It was truly a place of good fortune. There was a palace at the top of this short mountain. It was not very large and appeared unremarkable in the midst of the short mountain. However, it was within this unremarkable palace that all of the important cultivators of the 9 Stars Tao Palace had appeared at the same time. Even if they were separated by thousands of miles or tens of thousands of miles, there was bound to be a Yuan spirit projection that would descend here. There were more than 30 figures in total, almost filling up the small palace. All of a sudden, a cultivator who seemed old yet appeared young upon closer inspection suddenly appeared and stood at the top of the hall. The cultivator's true age could not be discerned from his illusory appearance. Palace Lord. When the others saw this, they were all shocked. Then they bowed respectfully. It is rare for the Tao Palace's spiritual bell to ring 3 times. May I know why the Palace Lord has summoned us? Someone quickly asked after the group took their seats. That's right. I had entered the cultivation palace to cultivate in seclusion, but I was awakened by the spiritual bell and had no choice but to rush over. Soon, a cultivator echoed. However, there were also cultivators who revealed solemn expressions. It was obvious that they had some understanding of the situation. This is indeed a major event for the 9-star Tao Palace. The 9-star Tao Palace Lord swept a glance over all the cultivators and said in a low voice, I just received news that one of the 9-star Tao Palace's branches, the Mirror Lake Mystic Ground, has been flattened. Aside from one person who managed to escape using the teleportation array, all of the cultivators, including Elder Evergreen, were slaughtered. Not a single one survived. What? How is that possible? The group of Yuan Spirit Realm cultivators turned pale with fright. Not to mention that the Mirror Lake Mystic Ground is extremely secretive among all of us here. Only the Palace Lord and a few others know its exact location. However, the defensive measures of the Mystic Ground and Elder Chongqing's own strength are not things that ordinary people can break through. A white-haired old man could not help but say, one has to be at least at the mid-stage of the Yuan Spirit Realm. Who is the attacker? Has Mount Azure Mystic begun their counterattack? Not at all. The attacker's cultivation level is not high. He is only at the mid-stage of the Golden Elixir Realm. At this moment, a person dressed in a long Confucian robe suddenly stood up and spoke. This person was none other than Wang Xueji, a primordial soul true cultivator known as the Confucian God. He had started cultivating immortality midway through his life as a mortal Confucian scholar and ascended to the mid-stage primordial soul realm. Mid-stage golden elixir realm? Who is it? Someone could not help but ask. Could it be Taoist Dark North? Wang Xueji said in a low voice. Chapter 700. Taoist North Ming? Most people were confused. This was a title that the many lofty experts of the 9-star Tao Palace were unfamiliar with. After all, Ziyue's rise was too short. It had only been a year. The few people who had heard of Taoist North Ming's name, especially an old man named Patriarch Qian Tong, trembled and revealed a look of shock. He had a deep impression of this name. Taoist Qian Yuan was the most outstanding of the Qian family's younger generation. He was also the only one who had reached the Golden Core stage with a third-grade Golden Core. He had high hopes of breaking through to the nascent soul stage. He had placed him in the 9-star Tao Palace branch in the cloud-piercing mountain range. Apart from his own mistakes, he had also been sent out to train and accumulate strength. But he had never imagined that there would be someone who could, and even dared to, attack his younger generation in the cloud-piercing mountain range, where there wasn't even a single nascent soul cultivator. That was why he was so angry that he had set up a bounty to kill him. However, according to what he knew, although Taoist Northming had extraordinary potential and had killed a golden core cultivator when he was at the God stage, it had only been a few months. No matter how amazing he was and how he had broken through to the golden core stage in such a short time, it was impossible for him to have the strength to kill a nascent soul cultivator and break through the Mirror Lake secret realm. Are you sure he is only at the golden core stage? Patriarch Qiantong couldn't help but ask. Yes, I personally rushed to the Mirror Lake secret realm after the incident. It was already a mess inside. Although it was difficult to see the trajectory of their battle with the Shadow Light, Taoist Northming had indeed displayed strength that far exceeded the Golden Core stage. He had broken through the secret realm's formation and killed Taoist Evergreen and the many disciples in the Mirror Lake secret realm. Among them was the genius disciple Zhou Xiao, who everyone had high hopes for and had a chance of becoming a nascent soul cultivator. Wang Shuiji nodded and said solemnly, "Also, when I used the Shadow Light, I discovered an abnormal fluctuation. Clearly, someone had deliberately concealed it. I suspect that this is one of the reasons why Taoist Northming was able to find a Mirror Lake secret realm so accurately. If I'm not wrong, it should be our old rival, the Azure Mystic Mountain." These rats! Everyone's hearts sank as they felt a headache coming on. If it was just Taoist Dark North by himself, they wouldn't care too much about him, no matter how powerful he was. In the tens of thousands of years that the 9-star Tao Palace had existed, they had encountered countless geniuses and many powerful enemies, but very few of them had been able to pose a threat to them. Only Qingxian Mountain. They weren't any weaker than the 9-star Tao Palace, and had been a great threat to them 10,000 years ago. If not for the fact that the current palace lord was strong enough to severely injure the mountain master of Mount Qingxian, the outcome would have been unpredictable. Another thing worth mentioning is that according to what we know, the fall of fellow Taoist Ascending Cloud and the true devil sect's Old Devil Chue is also greatly related to this Taoist Bei Ming. From the looks of it, the news of him killing 2 primordial spirit realm true cultivators is very likely true. Could it be that this Taoist Northming is actually from Mount Qingxian? It doesn't look like it. Such a genius could already slay a golden core cultivator when he was at the God realm. Now that he's only at the middle golden core realm, he has the battle prowess to slay a primordial spirit realm true cultivator. There's no doubt that when he breaks through to the golden core realm, he will condense that 1 in a billion pure violet golden core. Based on my understanding of Mount Qingxian, if there really is such a talented junior, they would never allow him to come out and fight against us when he's only at the middle golden core realm. That's true, but there's no doubt that this Taoist Northming is a great threat to the 9-star Tao Palace. He must be eradicated as soon as possible. The many experts of a 9-star Tao Palace were able to deduce countless possibilities with just a little bit of information. Thus, they quickly reached a consensus and turned their gazes to the palace lord of the 9-star Tao Palace, whose age couldn't be determined. In that case, Elder Wang, I'll leave Taoist Northming to you. The palace master of the 9-star Tao Palace turned his gaze to Wang Shuiji. No problem. However, this matter is ultimately related to the Qian family, so I need the Qian family's 3,000 Taoist puppets and a god-slaying arrow. The Confucian god, Wang Shuiji, nodded and made his request. Elder Wang, isn't this request a little too much? Patriarch Qiantong's expression changed. The Taoist puppets were the secret treasures of the Qian family. Even if they couldn't defeat a golden core cultivator, they were still much stronger than the average peak divine realm cultivator. There were thousands of them, enough to pose a threat to any golden core cultivator. If the 3,000 Taoist puppets were to form a formation, even a primordial soul cultivator would have a headache and risk death. They were extremely precious. Not to mention the god-slaying arrow. It was a secret arrow that specialized in killing primordial soul cultivators. A single god-slaying arrow was comparable to a full-strength attack from a middle primordial soul cultivator. It was a great threat to an early primordial soul cultivator. Even the Qian family didn't have many, only 2 left. He hadn't expected an unexpected calamity to befall him. Wang Shuji had bitten his heart the moment he opened his mouth. Agreed. However, no matter how much he objected, the palace lord's final decision made him lose the courage to resist. After all, the reason he'd offended Taoist Dark North this time was because of the Qian family. Because of this, 2 primordial soul cultivators of the 9-star Dao Palace had perished and a secret place had been destroyed. It was already good enough that the palace lord didn't settle the score with him. Although the 2 treasures pained him, he didn't dare complain since the palace lord had agreed. He could only obediently offer up the treasures. The Azure Mystic Mountain Medallion that Taoist Xian gave me is indeed mysterious and precious. This is especially true for the teleportation formation. It's truly an eye-opener. Several days later, in a barren mountain, Ziyue looked at the storage pouches that had appeared beside him. His eyes couldn't help but sparkle. Previously, Ziyue had discussed cooperation with Liu Yu Dao and the others. In addition to providing information about his enemies, he'd also requested a trade. After all, although he was free to act alone, it was extremely difficult for him to obtain many rare treasures by himself. For example, he'd previously obtained the 9 Extinction Divine Sword, the Celestial Spirit Sect's Dao Technique inheritance. There was no need to say much about the peerless power of this 9 Extinction Divine Sword. However, the difficulty of cultivating it was also well known. The materials needed to cultivate this Dao technique were not only extremely precious, but most of them were unique to the Celestial Spirit Sect. With his current relationship with the Celestial Spirit Sect, it was naturally extremely difficult for him to obtain these materials normally. Therefore, he thought of borrowing the power of the Azure Mystic Mountain. Chapter 701. After all, Qingxian Mountain was one of the top 10 superpowers in the astral world. There were countless experts, and they had a rich collection of resources. Qingxian Mountain naturally had the means to obtain treasures that were difficult for others to obtain, such as materials that were unique to Celestial Spirit Sect. Previously, he was still thinking about how to obtain the items that he needed smoothly and safely. He did not expect that with the help of the small Qingxian Mountain token and the teleportation formation within, he could teleport to a place that he thought was safe without having to agree on the location of the transaction or take the risk of meeting the other party. After keeping the 3 storage bags, Ziyue immediately took the Qingxian Mountain token and sent them into the North Underworld Grotto Heaven. After that, he did not linger on the mountain. His figure disappeared without a sound, and he quickly left the place. He was a cautious person. After obtaining the items that he needed with the help of the Qingxian Mountain token, he naturally would not stay on the same spot. After half an hour, Ziyue appeared in another barren mountain cave. Then, he moved his body and entered the North Underworld Grotto Heaven. In the outside world, the North Underworld Grotto Heaven turned into an ordinary stone bead. It was slightly hidden and buried in the mud. As long as it was not a cultivator of the Golden Elixir realm or above using their consciousness, it was impossible for outsiders to realize that this ordinary stone bead was actually the precious Grotto Heaven magic treasure. This storage bag indeed contains the items that I need to cultivate the 9 Extinction Holy Sword. Ziyue's eyes lit up. He flipped his hand and took out a jade bottle from the storage bag. When he opened the jade bottle, there was immediately a 9-color divine light that rippled and slowly rose up. This 9-color divine light seemed to contain endless mystery. Just by rising up slightly, it immediately caused the air to vibrate as if it was about to burst. 9 Extinction Holy Spirit? I did not expect that when cultivating the 9 Extinction Holy Sword, I can directly absorb and use the 9 Extinction Holy Spirit. This saves me a lot of hard work. Ziyue could not help but let out a joyful expression. Originally, he used the Qing Xian Mountain to exchange for the various materials that he needed to cultivate the 9 Extinction Holy Sword. Although those materials could be directly absorbed and used by him, it required a lot of complicated steps to follow. During cultivation, using it in such a detailed manner would naturally take a longer time. As for the 9 Extinction Divine Aura that was directly condensed, it was originally refined from many materials used to cultivate the 9 Extinction Divine Sword. Not only was the effect more prominent, the absorption speed was also faster. It could be said to be of great help to his cultivation progress. A total of 5,009 Extinction Divine Aura is enough for me to cultivate the 9 Extinction Divine Sword to the beginner level. Ziyue mumbled as his gaze shifted to the second bag of holding. Void Stone, Fortune Gilt, Moonlight Stone. Then came the third one. The third storage bag had the most items and was also the most miscellaneous. However, in terms of value, it was the lowest of the 3 storage bags. Most of them were abandoned magical equipment or huge amounts of metals, stones, and minerals. The treasures in the 2 storage bags had different uses for Ziyue. Among them, the Emptiness Stone, Fortune Gilt, Moonlight Stone, and other materials were prepared by Ziyue in order to use the heaven and earth in his sleeves to attempt to refine a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure. Although the number of treasures was small, the materials in the storage bag were enough for him to try 3 times. In his opinion, if he could successfully refine a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure once out of 3 times, it would be worth it. As for the abandoned magical equipment and other materials in the 3rd storage bag, he deliberately asked Liu Yudao to collect them in order to advance his natal Dharma treasure. This time, with the help of the Qing Xian Mountain token, they were all transported. Of course, the price was also not cheap. Ziyue had many gains in the Star Source Holy Mountain. Other than the Flower of Tao, the Star Source Holy Stone, and other things that he needed, most of them were disposed of by him. Whether it is cultivating the 9 Extinction Divine Sword, refining a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure, or refining a natal flying sword, it is closely related to the strength of the cultivator. The stronger the strength, the higher the efficiency of refining a natal flying sword. Whether it is cultivating Tao techniques, refining a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure, or refining a natal flying sword. Now that my spiritual power has reached more than 650 million, it is enough to raise my strength to the late stage of the Golden Elixir realm. It is just nice to raise my strength by another level. Ziyue knew in his heart how important one's strength was to him. Not only did he say this, but in his heart, there was also a sense of danger hanging high above his head at all times. It was the expert from a 9-star Tao Palace, the Heavenly Spirit Sect, and the True Devil Sect. Naturally, he knew that the stronger he was, the safer he would be. Without hesitation, Ziyue's gaze fell on his attribute panel. Spending 10 million points of spiritual power can raise the cultivation progress of the middle stage of the Supreme Primordial Tao technique from 40% to 41%. Upgrade. With a calm gaze, Ziyue firmly chose to upgrade. His body shook, and his aura rose slightly, as if in this short moment, he had become more tyrannical. Continue. Spending 100 million points of spiritual power can raise the cultivation progress of the middle stage of the Supreme Primordial Tao technique from 41% to 51%. Upgrade. Buzz. His aura rose once again, and the light in his eyes seemed to shine even brighter. Then, Ziyue seemed to be no longer satisfied with this step by step, and decided to go all the way. Spending 490 million points of spiritual power can raise the cultivation progress of the Supreme Primordial Tao technique from the middle stage, 51%, to the late stage, 0%. Upgrade. Ziyue chose to upgrade without hesitation. Boom! In an instant, a terrifying wave of spiritual chi of heaven and earth seemed to have descended from the heavens, and all of it poured into Ziyue's body. The aura on his body also rose rapidly as this special energy poured into him. Not only did the pure violet golden elixir in his body rapidly solidify and expand, but even the soul in his body also rose rapidly as his cultivation level rose. This was an all-round upgrade. Not only was the pure violet golden elixir expanding, but the soul was also strengthening. Ziyue's pure violet elixir energy was also rapidly transforming and baptizing, becoming even more powerful. Even his physical body, due to the transformation of the pure violet elixir energy, became stronger and tougher as it flowed. Breakthrough. From the middle stage of the golden elixir realm, I have completely broken through to the late stage of the golden elixir realm. As for my spiritual energy, it was reduced from the original 650 million to the current 50 million. It could be said that it had decreased by a large amount. However, all of this is worth it, because I can truly feel how powerful I am. This kind of power is really intoxicating. Extreme joy flashed across Ziyue's eyes. Chapter 702. With a breakthrough in his realm, Ziyue's strength in all aspects also soared. His every movement seemed to carry a special aura. When he looked up slightly, there seemed to be a bright light flickering in his eyes. After breaking through to the later stage of the Golden Core realm, my strength has naturally increased as well. If I go all out, I should have completely surpassed the early stage of the Primordial Spirit realm and reach the middle stage of the Primordial Spirit realm. However, I wonder what level my strength will be in the middle stage of the Primordial Spirit realm. Ziyue pondered silently. Without a comparison, there was naturally no way to determine his true strength. However, the various changes after the improvement of his strength still made him feel peaceful and satisfied. He also silently experienced his own strength and the changes in his perception of the world around him. After a while, he came back to his senses and laughed to himself. His gaze fell on the 3 storage bags again. After thinking about it, Ziyue decided to upgrade his intrinsic flying sword first. That was because the intrinsic flying sword was his Tao protector and could be compatible with his one sword cleaving all techniques. It could greatly increase his strength and could be said to be excellent. Therefore, he stretched out his hand and pointed slightly in front of him. Chi! All of a sudden, the bag of holding was filled with discarded magical treasures, as well as a vast amount of metal, stone, and spiritual materials, all of which fell to the ground. There was a huge amount of them, like a small mountain. Although many of the materials and Dharma treasures have been abandoned, they were not of low quality and their spirituality had not been completely destroyed. Therefore, they were all shining with golden light and spiritual light. Then, Ziyue stretched out his hand and beckoned. Buzz! His intrinsic flying sword immediately turned into a beam of spiritual light and rushed out. Then, with a slight flash, it directly floated above all the materials. Let's begin. With a thought, Bai Ziyue hurriedly controlled his intrinsic Dharma treasure. Instantly, the spiritual light on his intrinsic flying sword shone brightly. An extremely strong suction force was generated from the intrinsic flying sword. Buzz! 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 The endless spiritual materials trembled. The essence of the various Dharma treasures, the essence of metals and stones, the creation, all of them seemed to be attracted and turned into beams of spiritual light that surged into the intrinsic flying sword. It was accompanied by the soft hum of the intrinsic flying sword. As the essence of various materials surged in, the spirituality and power of the intrinsic flying sword also began to increase. Whoosh! Gasp! Moreover, as the flying sword's aura became stronger, the spiritual light that existed on the flying sword also became stronger. Under Ziyue's control, coupled with the light of spiritual wisdom's ability to absorb the light of spiritual wisdom, the light of spiritual wisdom kept on absorbing the light of spiritual wisdom. A large amount of metal and stone materials were reduced to powder one after another. Many fragments of magical equipment dimmed as well. The original materials seemed to have been corroded by a mighty force and were quickly worn away. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours as time passed. The mountain of materials and damaged magical treasures quickly disappeared, turning into ordinary objects and dust. The Dark North Flying Sword has advanced to the level of a mid-grade Jindan treasure. Suddenly, Ziyue's heart stirred, and he couldn't help but reveal a trace of joy. The Natal Flying Sword was a mid-grade gold core treasure. Because it contained spiritual intelligence, it had the possibility of becoming a numinous treasure. Whether it was in terms of power or potential, it was countless times better than a mid-grade gold core treasure of the same level. In Ziyue's hands, whether it was in terms of power or toughness, it was much better than a supreme-grade gold core treasure. However, at this time, he did not stop the sacrificial refining. Now his strength had been upgraded to the late-stage gold core realm. In theory, his natal magic treasure could naturally be upgraded to the level of a superior-grade gold core treasure. Therefore, he continued to control the magic treasure, constantly absorbing various metal and stone essences, spirituality, and creation. Chi. The last bit of material turned into flying ash and dissipated, but Ziyue's natal flying sword was still stuck at the level of a mid-grade gold core treasure and had not been officially upgraded. Sure enough, the material essences needed to upgrade a magic treasure with spiritual intelligence are far better than that of an ordinary gold core treasure. In this regard, Ziyue was not surprised. Since his natal magic treasure had accidentally awakened its spiritual intelligence and had the possibility of becoming a numinous treasure, he knew that if he wanted to continue upgrading it, the consumption would be very large. This time, he wanted to upgrade the North Sea Flying Sword continuously, so he naturally made some preparations. Without the slightest pause, Ziyue stretched out his hand and quickly took out a large pile of abandoned magic treasures and spiritual materials from his storage bag. Most of these were the spoils of war that he had obtained from killing many enemies. Among them, except for some magic treasures whose spirituality had been damaged and were difficult to recover, he also took out some gold core treasures that were in perfect condition and could be repaired with a certain price. 3 inferior-grade gold core treasures, 2 middle-grade gold core treasures, 2 superior-grade gold core treasures, and 2 supreme-grade gold core treasures. Ziyue glanced at the materials one by one, especially the few gold core treasures that were in relatively good condition, including the 2 supreme-grade gold core treasures that he had obtained from the previous generation's chief disciple of the Celestial Spirit sect. Although their spirituality had been damaged to a certain extent by the magnetic divine light that was cast by the Crimson Flame Astral Beast King that was transformed by the King of Magnetism and had not been repaired for more than 100 years, their spirituality had been seriously damaged. In fact, if they were repaired with a certain price and were nourished with core essence for decades, they could also be restored to their original condition. However, at this time, Ziyue took them out without hesitation and threw them out. These magic treasures were very valuable and had the possibility of being restored to their original condition. However, what he valued more was his natal magic treasures, because natal magic treasures were Tao protectors that could really enhance his strength. In his eyes, they were better than all magic treasures. Although these gold core treasures were good, they were damaged after all. It was better to use them as nourishment and resources for his natal flying sword to upgrade its grade. Moreover, he believed that once his natal magic treasures were upgraded to the same grade, they would definitely be far superior to these magic treasures. For example, the North Sea Flying Sword was only a middle-grade gold core treasure at this time, but when it was used in his hand, it had already given birth to many supreme-grade gold core treasures. If it continued to upgrade and reach the level of a high-grade gold core treasure, he estimated that it would not be weaker than a real nascent soul treasure. In addition to those gold core treasures, the most precious material in this pile of materials was naturally the piece of black meteorite gold that he had obtained from the rising cloud ancestor. This black meteorite gold is an ancient refining material and is extremely precious. If any magic treasure is added with black meteorite gold, Not only will its toughness and hardness be greatly improved, it will also have the effect of avoiding thunder and lightning. It will also have some resistance to the heavenly tribulation. Zuf valued this material very much. He had originally intended to integrate it into his natal magic treasure. At this time, when the magic treasure was upgrading, he felt that it was very suitable. Chapter 703. As a result, Zuf's flying sword vibrated once again. Furthermore, with a thought from Baizu, a ball of scorching white flames whizzed out rapidly. This white flame was Zuf's golden core fire. The golden core fire formed from the perfect violet golden core was extremely hot. It could be said that there was nothing it could not burn and nothing it could not melt. When the golden core fire landed on the black meteorite gold, it became even more powerful after being smelted. However, the pure black meteorite gold was not very tough. Therefore, the black meteorite gold was melted into a ball and turned into a golden stone essence, which was absorbed by Zuf's natal flying sword. Chi chi chi. As the black meteorite gold fused into the natal flying sword, it vibrated rapidly and soon became bloated, as if it had expanded a lot in a short time. But shortly after, bits of powder and dregs fell to the ground as if they were repelled by some kind of special force. Then, they were burned to ashes by Zuf's golden core fire. This is because the material of the magic treasure has been refined again. Zuf knew that this was because the black meteorite gold was of such a high grade that when it was fused into the natal flying sword, it would also refine his natal flying sword. These impurities could not withstand the smelting of the black meteorite gold and could only be repelled. As these impurities were removed, the bloated natal flying sword quickly recovered to its original state. However, because of the black meteorite gold, the color of the North Sea flying sword's appearance also changed. It turned into a gold ink color that was neither black nor gold. Moreover, the moment the last wisp of black meteorite gold fused into the natal flying sword, buzz, the natal flying sword immediately made a violent vibrating sound. Then it shone brightly. Heaven and earth seemed to roar at this moment. As it vibrated, it stirred up the surrounding air and created ripples, as if it was going to tear a hole in the air. It has leveled up? I didn't expect that just by adding the black meteorite gold, my natal flying sword had already leveled up to the level of a superior grade golden core treasure. Zuf could not help but show a hint of surprise on his face. However, he also felt that it was a matter of course. Previously, his natal magic treasure was actually stuck between the mid-grade and high-grade golden core level. It was just that it lacked a certain opportunity. In other words, the essence of metal and stone within those materials was not enough to support the advancement of his flying sword. But now, with the fusion of the ancient material, the black meteorite gold, its essence was immediately refined, and it was very normal for it to be promoted smoothly. But then, Zuf felt his flying sword tremble, vaguely transmitting a kind of extreme desire. Was this the effect of his intellect? Does it need more metal and stone essences and spirituality to nourish itself? Zuf was slightly startled and then relaxed his control. Buzz! As the flying sword trembled, it immediately turned into a streamer and rushed to the many materials and abandoned magic weapons Zuf had taken out before. Among them, there were a few golden core treasures. A unique light descended from above. Chi chi chi. An extremely strong devouring force followed the descent of the spiritual light and quickly acted on the many materials and magic treasures made of waste gas. A large amount of metal and stone essences, spirituality, then quickly poured into the flying sword like moths to a flame. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, just like that, a few more hours passed. When Zuf vaguely felt a sense of satisfaction from the flying sword, he immediately understood that his natal flying sword had been completely stabilized and was at the peak of a superior grade, golden core level. If he did not have more precious materials or more accumulation of spiritual essence, or the activation of his own immortal cultivation realm, it would be very difficult for it to advance again in a short period of time and set foot into the level of a superior grade golden core level. However, even if that's the case, the power of my natal magic treasure is already enough for me. In my hands, the power of a superior grade golden core level treasure is no less than that of an inferior grade immortal soul level treasure. Just with the power of the flying sword alone, I can unleash an offensive power comparable to that of an early stage immortal soul level cultivator. If I use all my combat power and use it together with the one sword breaks all spells, then its offensive power will definitely be extremely strong, and only under my Tao techniques and primordial magnetic divine light. And if I successfully cultivate the 9 extinction divine sword to perfection and use it together with my natal flying sword, then its power. Ziyue was excited and involuntarily controlled his natal flying sword to shoot out. Whoosh! With just a stroke, a black thread vaguely opened up, and violent ripples fluctuated, causing the surrounding space to tremble. And it was extremely fast. In a flash, even a peak golden core level cultivator would find it difficult to detect its trajectory. It only took 1,000th of a second to cover a distance of 100,000 feet. After a long while, Ziyue put the flying sword back into his body and let it be nourished by his purple core essence. Dark North Grotto Heaven, Dark North Sect, Dark North Hall. The Dark North Sect's Vice Sect Master, True Lord Bai, bowed slightly and looked respectfully at the young cultivator before him. He said excitedly, "Sect Master, we have already accounted for the previous harvest. All in all, it is extremely large and extremely large. It is truly beyond our imagination." As he spoke, True Lord Bai seemed to be unable to contain his emotions, and his beard trembled in excitement, even though he had been cultivating for quite some time now. However, even he had never seen such a bountiful harvest before, nor had he handled such a huge amount of wealth. Not only were there natural treasures and dharma treasures that he had never dared to imagine, there were also many secret treasures, secret techniques, and cultivation techniques that he had never even heard of. "Oh, tell me about it." Ziyue sat on the seat of honor and asked curiously. He knew that the Dark North Sect must have reaped a great harvest from the Mirror Lake mystic ground of the 9-star Tao Palace. After all, the mystic ground was where the elite disciples of the 9-star Tao Palace were nurtured, and there were definitely many treasures. But because he was concerned about the growth of his cultivation and the refinement of his natal flying sword, he had not had the time to listen to the report until now. This time, we have obtained a total of 530,000 high-grade spirit stones. This does not include the 1,500 supreme-grade spirit stones in the spirit vein core. These 1,500 supreme-grade spirit stones. Sect Master, the grade of our spirit vein is only at the beginning of the 4th grade. For most of the disciples, it is barely enough. But for some of the stronger disciples in the sect, it is somewhat insufficient. Therefore, I suggest that we put these 1,500 high-grade spirit stones into the spirit vein core of our Dark North Mountain. I believe that it will not be difficult to upgrade it to the middle or even advanced grade of the 4th grade spirit vein. Having said that, True Monarch Bai cautiously suggested. Chapter 704. The spirit vein is the foundation of sect, so I will not neglect it. Thank you for your hard work during this period of time. Ziyue glanced at perfected Lord Bai. He knew that with perfected Lord Bai's realm, if he were to cultivate with all his might, the spiritual chi of the beginner grade 4 spirit vein would be insufficient, which would affect the cultivation of the other disciples. Therefore, perfected Lord Bai did not cultivate much during this period of time. At most, he would use the spiritual chi to recover his Jindan essence, but his strength did not improve at all. Therefore, he continued solemnly. "Even if you did not mention it, I would have used these 1,500 supreme-grade spiritual stones to upgrade the grade of the North Underworld Mountain Spirit Vein. Also, to be on the safe side, I will take out 200,000 of the 530,000 upper-grade spiritual stones to fill the various parts of the spirit vein and increase its foundation. I believe that it should be able to upgrade the spirit vein to an advanced grade 4 spirit vein. Thank you for your understanding, sect leader. Perfected Lord Bai hurriedly replied emotionally. An advanced grade 4 spirit vein was enough to support the cultivation and development of an immortal sect. Apart from Bai Ziyue, who was a heaven-defying existence, the North Nether sect was definitely far from a true celestial method sect. Therefore, it would be able to support the long-term cultivation of all their disciples. When the spirit vein was upgraded, there would be auspicious signs between heaven and earth. Many disciples would stand out and their strength would be greatly improved. Therefore, he was secretly looking forward to it. His strength had already reached the middle stage of the golden elixir realm. Originally, with his aptitude, he had no hope of reaching a higher stage. However, with the auspicious signs and the many treasures he had obtained this time, he believed that it would not be impossible for him to break through the shackles of the realm and step into the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm, or even the peak stage of the golden elixir realm. In addition to the spiritual stones, we have obtained a total of hundreds of magic treasures of various grades. One of them is an immortal soul treasure called the Qingming Dual Scissors, which belonged to Liu Changqing, an immortal soul expert. In addition, there are 3 supreme-grade golden elixir treasures, 5 upper-grade golden elixir treasures, and 12 low-grade golden elixir treasures. There are 372 magic treasures of various grades. The supreme-grade gold core treasures are a saber, a sword, and a hammer. They are respectively, in addition to the magic treasures, there are also many heavenly materials and earthly treasures, spiritual pills, and spiritual talismans of various grades. Extreme Earth Spiritual Elixir, 5 Reincarnation Life Elixir, green with spiritual fruit, red blood divine marrow, Fu Shun Pill, 5 Chi 3 Origin Talisman, apocalyptic divine thunder, essence of Mother Earth. In addition, there were all sorts of array Dao treasures and materials related to alchemy, artifact forging, and so on. The quantity was truly like an ocean. Disregarding everything else, just these materials alone are extremely valuable. It would cost at least 3 million high-grade spirit stones to purchase them. However, the most important thing is still the various inheritances obtained from within. Alchemy, smithing, formation, puppeteering, talisman crafting, godly writing. There were all kinds of heritage that had been left behind, and they were all grade 4 heritage. In other words, according to these inheritances, if a cultivator's talent and potential were good and had sufficient resources, they could follow the prescribed order and directly become a grade for alchemy master, weapon crafting master, formation master, or puppet master. It can be said that this is a huge supplement to the cultivation and development of the North Nether sect. Of course, there are also all sorts of cultivation methods, divine powers, great divine powers, and Tao technique inheritances. Although many of the cultivation methods and divine powers inheritances seem to be inferior to those left behind by the sect leader on the stone steps of inheritance. However, these inheritances came from the 9-star Tao Palace after all. The quantity, richness, and quality of these inheritances are far superior to those left behind by the sect leader. It can be said to be of great benefit to the accumulation of our sect. All in all, our harvest this time is really great. If converted to spirit stones, it is definitely not less than 10 million high-grade spirit stones. In fact, it is even more. This is because the inheritances, magic treasures, and so on are all priceless and difficult to buy outside. Then, True Lord Bai continued to speak and began to talk about the harvest in the Mirror Lake secret place. Zhou nodded repeatedly, but his heart was very calm. He had already expected the harvest this time. The Mirror Lake secret place was a place used by the 9-star Tao Palace to cultivate disciples. It was rich in natural resources, many treasures, and many inheritances. However, although these items were quite valuable, they could not move Bai Ziyue too much. His vision was no longer limited to this. It was only when he heard True Lord Bai mention that he had a Dao technique inheritance that his expression changed slightly, revealing a hint of interest. Seeing this, True Lord Bai's eyes lit up. He quickly flipped his hand and took out a storage bag, saying, "Many of the treasures mentioned above have been sealed in the sect's secret vault and will be used in the future. However, there are also some treasures that I have specially selected that may be beneficial to the sect leader's cultivation. They're all placed in this storage bag." As he spoke, he quickly and respectfully handed over the storage bag. How thoughtful! Ziyue reached out to take it and scanned it with his divine sense. As expected, he found that in the storage bag, other than the inferior primordial spirit treasure used by Lu Chongqing, there were 3 supreme-grade golden core treasures, 5 superior-grade golden core treasures, and other high-grade Dharma treasures. There were also some heavenly treasures that could increase a cultivator's immortal cultivation realm, recovery-type spirit pills, and some heavenly treasures that were placed separately. However, what Ziyue valued the most were the dozen or so special inheritance stone tablets in the storage bag. After thinking about it, Ziyue did not directly investigate the inheritances. Instead, he flipped his hand and took out a supreme-grade golden core treasure flying sword. He handed it to True Lord Bai and said, "This flying sword is of good quality. You can use it to protect yourself." Thank you, sect leader." True Lord Bai was stunned. Then, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face as he spoke. Although these treasures had passed through his hands, he was very clear about them. All of these belonged to the sect leader. In fact, everything in the North Nether sect belonged solely to the sect leader. Therefore, as long as the sect leader did not say anything, even if he was very tempted by these treasures, he would not dare to use them at all. At this moment, Bai Ziyue directly gave him a gift, and it was even a flying sword of excellent quality and power. One could imagine the excitement in his heart. "You deserve this. It is also a compensation for your hard work during this period of time. In addition, we have gained a lot this time. Every disciple in the sect has contributed greatly. You and the others could draw up a rule and give out appropriate rewards and punishments." Ziyue waved his hand and said, "Yes." True Lord Bai responded respectfully and then silently left. Chapter 705. Seeing True Lord Bai leave, Ziyue's gaze fell on the many inheritances in his storage bag. With a wave of his hand, a total of 15 inheritance steals appeared in front of him. These inheritance steals were all restricted by the 9-star Dao Palace. If one did not have the corresponding method to break them, even if one could see the introduction of the inheritance through the gaps in the restrictions, it would be difficult to see the true secrets within and truly obtain these inheritances. Therefore, although True Lord Bai had received these inheritances before, he did not have the corresponding method to break them. Therefore, he could only see the names of the inheritances, but not the true inheritances. However, this was not a problem for Ziyue. With a flip of his hand, Ziyue quickly took out a special token. This token was the Sun token he had obtained from the Sun-Moon Star token of the Rising Cloud Ancestor. The Sun-Moon Star tokens of the 9-star Dao Palace are clearly ranked. Many restrictions and formations can be broken with the help of the Star token, Moon token, Sun token, and Sun-Moon Star token. The Sun token is already one of the higher-ranked tokens in the 9-star Dao Palace. It can be used to break the majority of the inheritances. Now that the Sun-Moon Star token of the Rising Cloud Ancestor is in my hands, as long as the restrictions on these inheritance deals are not specifically changed, they will not hinder me from breaking the restrictions. Ziyue muttered to himself. The restrictions on these inheritance deals were naturally not changed. Generally speaking, unless there was a great crisis, the 9-star Dao Palace would not specifically change the restrictions on so many inheritances because of 1 or 2 Sun tokens or Moon tokens. Therefore, when Ziyue controlled the Sun token, he shot out beams of spiritual light. Wong, wong, wong. Immediately, the restrictions on the inheritances were broken one after another. 7 great mystique inheritances, 5 cultivation method inheritances that lead to the peak of the golden core realm, 1 cultivation method inheritance that leads to the late primordial spirit realm, 1 Tao technique inheritance, and 1 primordial spirit treasure refinement method. Ziyue checked them one by one. Although his expression did not change, he could not help but feel excited. Among these inheritances, the 7 great mystique inheritances and 5 cultivation method inheritances that lead to the peak of the golden core realm were nothing to him. With his current strength, he had no use for it at all. However, in his opinion, the cultivation technique inheritance that allowed one to reach the late primordial spirit realm and the Tao technique inheritance were extremely valuable. Even the refinement method of the origin spirit treasure caused his mind to tremble. The late-stage essence soul realm cultivation technique, 9 cycles heavenly lightning tribulation, Taoist technique legacy, great Tao aspect, and a refinement method for essence soul realm treasures, known as Great Luo armor. Ziyue could not help but look at the 3 inheritances. He invaded Zhang Xian's spiritual perception and began to examine it carefully. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The 9 cycles of heavenly lightning tribulation is actually a cultivation method that cultivates by gathering the lightning of the heavens and earth. The lightning of heaven and earth was divided into spring lightning, summer lightning, autumn lightning, winter lightning. There were also lightning that was mysteriously produced due to various changes in the environment of heaven and earth. Although most of them were weaker than the lightning of the heavenly lightning tribulation experienced by Golden Core Realm cultivators. If one cultivated this cultivation method at the Golden Core Realm, one's chances of overcoming the heavenly lightning tribulation would be increased by more than 30% when breaking through from the peak of the Golden Core Realm to the primordial spirit realm. For many cultivators who aspire to attain the primordial spirit realm, this is a supreme cultivation method. Ziyue silently comprehended the wonders of the cultivation method of the 9 cycles, heavenly lightning tribulation, and could not help but be amazed by its ingenuity. However, the supreme primordial Tao technique that he had created himself did not have as many advantages as the 9 cycles heavenly lightning tribulation when overcoming the heavenly lightning tribulation. However, it was indeed the most suitable cultivation method for him and could increase his strength the most. Naturally, he would not choose to change his cultivation method. However, after I break through to the primordial spirit realm, this cultivation method can be used as a foundation for me. It can be used as a reference for me to create my own cultivation method for the primordial spirit realm. Ziyue memorized the wonders of the cultivation method in his mind. This Tao technique inheritance, Great Way Dharma form, actually had a lot in common with my great divine spiritual Dharma body. However, compared to the divine spiritual Dharma body, this Great Way Dharma form is much more powerful in terms of its subtlety, power, and the growth of my strength. After all, Tao techniques are still Tao techniques. They can affect the natural order, and their power is naturally more terrifying. Once I cultivate it and reach the level of perfection, my strength will definitely increase tremendously. Ziyue was very satisfied with this Tao technique legacy, although it was not an offensive Tao technique. However, this method of increasing one's strength could allow his strength, which was not weak to begin with, to soar once again. This made him even more delighted. After all, he already had the primordial magnet divine light and the 9 extinction divine sword for offensive Tao techniques. He did not lack this one. As for the final primordial spirit treasure, the refinement method of the Daluo armor. This Daluo armor is one of the rare treasures that can directly protect a cultivator's primordial spirit. It can be worn directly on a cultivator's primordial spirit and become one with it. Once an attack lands on the primordial spirit and fails to break through the Daluo armor, it will not cause any harm to the primordial spirit within the armor. A precious treasure. A precious treasure. Once the Daluo armor is refined, it will definitely be a precious treasure. There is almost no primordial spirit realm cultivator who would not be tempted. Who would have thought that apart from the Tao technique legacy and the great Tao Dharma form, I would also have such an unexpected gain? Ziyue's breathing quickened immediately. He was well aware of the value of the Daoyuo armor. In his opinion, it was even more valuable than a Tao technique legacy. The only pity was that the Daoyuo armor did not have a physical object. It only had the refinement method. However, thinking about it, this is also extremely normal. If the Daoyuo armor really exists, then it won't be so easy for me to kill Lu Chongqing. At the very least, his primordial spirit will definitely be able to escape with the help of the Daoyuo armor. Another thing worth mentioning is that although the Daoyuo armor is precious, it is definitely a precious treasure. However, it is extremely difficult to refine, and the materials used to refine are hard to find. It is definitely enormous and definitely not something that an ordinary cultivator or primordial spirit realm cultivator would be able to bear. Ziyue could not help but reveal a helpless expression when he recalled the refinement method of the Daoyuo armor recorded in the legacy steel. Although most of the materials required were not rare in the world, there were still 9 of them that were comparable to the ancient materials used to refine black meteoric gold. It was no wonder that Lu Chongqing was unable to refine such a precious treasure, even though he had grasped the refinement method. Furthermore, if he wanted to truly refine the Daoyuo armor, he would at least need to invite an initial 5th-grade weapon refiner to have some confidence. A 5th-grade weapon refiner status was even higher than that of an ordinary primordial spirit realm cultivator. Even 4th-grade weapon refiners were extremely rare in the entire astral boundary, and 5th-grade weapon refiners were even rarer. The price to invite such a figure would definitely not be low. Chapter 706. But this isn't much of a problem for me. As long as I collect 1 or 2 refining methods that can reach the level of grade 5, I can use the attribute panel to raise my refining ability to the early stage of grade 5, the middle stage of grade 5, and even the high stage of grade 5. Ziyue's eyes brightened. For others, if they wanted to refine the Daoyuo armor, the most difficult thing would be to find a grade 5 weapon craftsman and ask them to refine it. But for him, it was nothing. The only thing that he found difficult was actually gathering the materials. 9 types of ancient refining materials comparable to black meteorite gold. Not to mention him, even a superforce would find it difficult to gather all of them in a short period of time. I can only ask Azure Mystic Mountain for the materials. Although it might be difficult to gather all of them, it's better than doing it all by myself. Ziyue was not a pedantic person. Since he was cooperating with Azure Mystic Mountain, he naturally would not ignore this power and not make use of it. After all, Azure Mystic Mountain was one of the 10 super factions of the Star Realm. Whether it was in terms of gathering treasures or the collection of treasures in their treasury, they were far superior to him. With a thought, he did not hesitate. His figure flashed, and he charged out of the northern underworld wonderland. The next moment, he appeared in the cave he had been in. The cave was completely calm and had not changed in the slightest. Ziyue flipped his hand and took out the Azure Mystic Mountain token. He casually tapped on the Qingxian Mountain token. BZZ. There was a rumbling sound, and in an instant, a spiritual light appeared. Then, a human figure appeared in front of Ziyue in the sky above the spiritual light. It was the elder of Azure Mystic Mountain who had given him the Azure Mystic Mountain token, Taoist Xianxian. Taoist Northern Underworld? I didn't think that you'd come to find me so soon. Do you want to find out the whereabouts of another secret place in the 9-star Tao Palace? Taoist Xianxian looked at Ziyue and smiled. We'll talk about the secret place later. This time, I want to borrow Azure Mystic Mountain to help me gather a few things. Also, help me gather some information. Ziyue did not beat around the bush and said directly, a blacksmith's inheritance that can lead to the beginning of the 5th grade. Of course, the higher the inheritance's grade, the better. It would be best if it could be at the middle of the 5th grade or the high of the 5th grade. At the same time, help me find out if there are any grade 4 array masters in the firmament territory. Similarly, the stronger the array master's array skills are, the better. Also, help me gather some materials. These include Thousand Feather Star, Thousand Water, Earth Spirit, Rhinoceros. Blacksmith's Inheritance? Array Master? There are these materials. Taoist Su Xian looked deeply at Bai Ziwei and said, "In the immortal spell world, there are very few blacksmiths above the 4th grade, let alone the 5th grade. As far as I know, in the entire firmament territory, only Master Jinheng of the Nature Sect has reached the early level 5 in refining weapons. Not to mention this kind of inheritance that can lead to a grade 5 blacksmith grandmaster. On the other hand, grade 4 array masters are many times more difficult than blacksmithing, but there are still some grade 4 array masters in the Azure Mystic Mountain. As for the Thousand Feather Star, Thousand Water, and Earth Spirit Rhinoceros." Taoist Xuanxuan's face showed a trace of embarrassment. "Can you gather them?" Zuf frowned. "Yes." Taoist Xuan slowly nodded and said, "My Azure Mystic Mountain has existed for even longer than the 9 stars of the Tao Palace. 10,000 years ago, we suffered an unprecedented blow. Although we suffered a great loss, our foundation is still very deep. Although the inheritance of grade 5 and above is precious and rare, we still have 1 or 2. Thousand Feather Star, Thousand Water, Earth Spirit Rhinoceros, and other materials. Except for 1 or 2 that have been used up, most of the treasures of Azure Mystic Mountain still have some left. However, Taoist Northming, everything in this world has a price. Even in Azure Mystic Mountain, the inheritance of grade 5 and above is extremely precious. Not to mention the Thousand Feather Star, Thousand Water, Earth Spirit Rhinoceros, and other materials are mostly ancient materials. Now that the method of synthesis has been lost, it can be said that they are used less and less. Therefore, the price to take these materials out of Azure Mystic Mountain's treasury is also very high. What are the conditions? Ziwei was not surprised. Although he had cooperated with Azure Mystic Mountain, it was based on the principle of mutual benefit and fairness. The other party would not give him benefits for no reason, and he would not let them use him and ignore his own danger. It was very normal for them to raise conditions. Actually, if you are willing to accept our conditions and join Azure Mystic Mountain, what's wrong with giving you the inheritance of blacksmithing? As for the materials, we can also give them to you for free as a reward." Taoist Xianxian paused and suddenly said. Obviously, he had not given up on roping Ziwei in. In fact, the strength and potential that Ziwei had displayed in the Mirror Lake secret realm had not only shocked him, but it also reached the ears of the Mountain Lord of Azure Mystic Mountain. Even a Mountain Lord of Azure Mystic Mountain was moved and wanted to recruit him. It could be said that although Bai Ziwei was only a Golden Elixir Realm cultivator, he had already attracted the attention of many peak Primordial Soul Realm cultivators, including the Palace Master of the 9 Stars Tao Palace, the Mountain Master of Mount Qing Xian, the Sect Master of the Celestial Spirit Sect, and the Sect Master of the True Devil Sect. It was also because of this that Taoist Xian of Azure Mystic Mountain had repeatedly tried to rope Ziwei in. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior. Why don't you state your conditions?" Ziwei shook his head and said, "All right." Although Taoist Xian was somewhat regretful, he did not say more. His expression turned serious as he said, "I just received news that the 9-Star Palace will be sending the Confucian god, Wang Shueji, to hunt you down. Although Wang Shueji is here to kill you, his Confucian techniques are indeed extraordinary. In the past, in the True Law domain, he posed a great threat to the disciples of Azure Mystic Mountain. The son of a great figure of Azure Mystic Mountain had fallen at the hands of Wang Shueji. Therefore, within Azure Mystic Mountain, we have already set up a bounty on Wang Shueji. If you can kill Wang Shueji, then the Xuandian of Creation, an advanced 5th grade weaponsmith, will be given to you as a reward. This is just right for you. However, I must warn you that the strength of this Confucian god, Wang Shueji, is countless times stronger than the likes of the Ascending Cloud Ancestor and Lu Chongqing. He is also at the peak of the mid-stage Primordial Soul Realm and has the battle record of suppressing 3 true cultivators of the same level and not losing to a late-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. It won't be that easy to kill him. I understand. Zuf felt a chill in his heart. He had long guessed that the 9-star palace would send experts to hunt him down, but he did not expect it to be Wang Xueji. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.